Hi, everyone. This is Jeremy Gardner, and you're listening to What Makes a Man. Today's guest is one of my favorite people on the internet who I just DM'd on Instagram and I said, "Can I get you on my podcast?" I'm so happy he said yes. He is a former professional boxer, a masterful chess player who just beat me several times over again, and an incredible writer, influencer, and Twitter philosopher. This is Ed Latimore. Thank you for coming.
Hey, not a problem. Thanks for having me. This is a great excuse for me to come out to Los Angeles.
Well, I loved it. I DM'd you and I was like, "Can I get you to come shoot at my studio in LA?" And you were like, "How about 2 weeks?" I was like, "Let's do it."
And I'd have tried to do it sooner, but there are things that come up, and there was
Well,
this nice window, and I'm like, all right, let's go do it.
I just got back from a week in Miami. That was not the time for me to do any sort of podcast stuff. So I'm glad you're here now. There's like so much I want to talk about. I'll try to be mindful of time, but I'd really like to let things run and see where they go because I mostly follow you on Twitter. You tweet about just about everything.
Everything I
But
can.
but I want to rewind before you were this guy that has done so many different things that have so many thoughts in the world. Let's go back to where your life started because I think that will give a lot of insight into the perspective you have on the world and these philosophies that I think are very well developed, but they have to come from somewhere. So let's go back to like birth, childhood,
All the way back.
all the way.
But and it's funny, like I was talking to some friends yesterday, and pretty much anyone that I have a chance to talk to, I make sure I bring up this idea that's been in my head. So on February 15th, I turned 36. And so I did the math, and every second after 8:04 p.m., the time I was born, I've been an adult longer than I was a child. And so
Wait,
now,
wait. When did adulthood start? 18?
18, right?
Okay.
We're using
I say it
18.
doesn't start till 30, so I'm not quite there yet in my view, but legally an
But
adult.
legally, yeah. So you have real perspective. I've been out of high school now longer than I was,
Right.
not in school. So, or rather in school. And most of my childhood, most of those 18 years, no, not even most of them, all of them actually. I lived in public housing projects in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Typical, cliche at-risk youth, single mom, always working, lived in public housing, on and off, welfare, that kind of thing. But I was really fortunate. You get dealt some bad hands, you get dealt some good hands. There's some good things in there, bad things in there. I had a mother that cared about me very much, and one of the things we've learned is that when it comes to like predicting whether you're going to be a wayward youth or you're going to get caught up in the street life, all that crazy stuff, it doesn't matter quite as much what you have, and it's very easy to focus on what you don't have when you don't have it because you get reminded. I certainly did. I get reminded of the things I don't have, especially when I went to a different school across town that was not in the same socioeconomic circle as the people I grew up in, and this happened when I went to high school. But my mom, I never doubted the fact that my mother loved me. And while there were several clashes of we'll say philosophy of life, I never doubted that she cared about me. And that probably was a great like prophylaxis against any type of negative influence for the street. We will find that when kids feel loved, when they feel taken care of, they're much less likely to do crazy stuff like end up in prison if you're a guy, or on the pole if you're a girl, as they say, right? So I was really fortunate there. But that doesn't mean it was easy. I mean, I think outside we never starved, but outside of that, I mean,
You
people
struggled.
we struggled maybe, and struggle on all levels, right? There's the well, even though we didn't start, it didn't mean we didn't come close to it. When you're in subsidized housing, aka public housing projects, your rent is proportional, but you make. So we were never really worried about being kicked out or anything because if 1 month it was only like $250, it came in rent was $25.
But you didn't necessarily know where your next meal was going to come from.
Mostly, we're pretty good at it. The summer was a little rough, but we're really fortunate. They had these summer lunch programs. I think they still do them in a lot of major cities, for kids that rely on school to eat a meal a day, sometimes two, they're like, okay, we're going to replace those over the summer now that you're not in school. And we relied on those like no other. So that's just smart. I mean, it's not like the money was there, but the resources were there and we get taken care of.
So I have a question, and we're gonna get philosophical and political pretty quickly,
Oh
just because
boy.
because I think this is an important point because you have a perspective that I think many of my listeners will not have had. Most of them, in fact, and I come from the world of crypto, which is full of libertarians. I grew up in a very liberal small town where we were big, fans and believers in the social security system, and I've pushed more towards the center over the years. But you're a big writer on like radical self-reliance,
Yeah.
take a term from Burning Man, and self-sufficiency. And I'm sure many of your followers, in fact, lean along that spectrum where they're not big believers in government or welfare. But here you are speaking about how that kept you guys
Yeah.
alive.
It,
What are your views on welfare and those social security systems that exist?
oh man, I got a good friend. He's always giving me shit for this. He's like, I know how you grew up. I don't understand how you're so fiscally conservative. And I think he misunderstands my perspective. I will be the first. I mean, you just heard me talk about it. I'll be the first person to say those programs make a difference. Not only do they make a difference, but there's a real, I think, trade off or cost that comes with them. That we're deciding that if we give some help this way, that's better than giving none and seeing what people do in the absence of it. But like right now, crime is largely confined to low income areas. At least there's a sharp correlation with violent crime
Well,
and
violent
low
crime.
income.
There's
Yeah,
plenty of white collar crime.
violent. Could you imagine what would happen though if they say, you know what, welfare's done, public housing's done, you motherfuckers on your own.
No, you'd have what happens in Mexico. You'd have like these narco states where the ways you make money in these low income areas through drugs and crime, those people end up taking over
You want to know
society.
what's crazy about the narco states? I saw this; it blew my mind. One of the big issues in Mexico right there is how powerful the cartels are, and they're so powerful that I mean, like in some places they're winning the battle against the army, not the police, the army.
Well, and they've literally like taken over the
Yeah,
army in certain places.
and so one of the things I saw was a billboard, and it was for the cartel. They were recruiting, and they were offering health care, and that's hard to turn down when you have nothing. So I think about the programs. They're there and they're great. My issue is that a person may come to rely on them as an adult.
It creates a cycle of
It really
dependency.
does,
Yeah.
and it really incentivizes staying on the cycle because there's a gray area. It's like you don't make enough, be on the system.
But
You
it
make too
but
much,
then you disqualify, but don't have enough to really sustain
right?
yourself, and
And
then it creates this cycle of poverty.
and it's a really hard cycle to get out of. And when you consider how much effort it takes and what the return on the investment of time and energy is, a lot of people decide that it is just not worth it. You ever see The Matrix? And I'm sure I'll make
More
this
than
reference.
once.
I make references to this movie several times. But Morpheus he says to Neo, we never free a mind after a certain age, right? And that idea works just in reverse. Works in reverse as well. After you have your habits built in, you don't want to really change them. It's too much energy. The time investment is too big. So I think for the adults who decide this is the life we're gonna live, there's not really much we can do. So what can we do? We can make sure the next generation, we can do the best we can to make sure the next generation does not follow step. And if that means some assistance, because it goes further than the assistance. There's a lot of because it was I would say I'm about as I mean, I'm not the poster child for survivor's bias, but most people do not exist where I exist now today and come from where I came from. There are just too many traps to catch you along the way, too many bad habits to overcome that you don't quite beat before society decides to get them out of you, that kind of thing. But on the financial front, if we can make sure that the kid has a roof over their head, if we can lower the probability. We can't eliminate it. We can't make a
And you
guarantee.
can give them a chance.
Yeah, give them a chance. That's pretty much it. And the cost, people just don't. All they see is the immediate cost. Humans are really bad at second and third order
Yeah.
consequences. All they see is, oh man, we got to spend this money on on public assistance, on welfare, on these social programs. They don't see because they can't and they shouldn't, and thank goodness, hopefully they never will. They don't see what happens if we rip all those programs away. That problem is that's not the problem we want. That's not the society we want to live in. So
And so it sounds like, though, your mom really did make the most of these programs, and she really was the support structure for you that enabled you to break that cycle of poverty.
I wouldn't say it's weird. I have a really weird relationship with my mom, and as far as my childhood goes, because one of the things that I struggled with, especially from the age of say 18 to 23, I went through this period where I was just super angry and bitter
Resentful, yeah.
because it been built through high school. Because I went to high school, we had something called a magnet program in my city where instead of going to the high school that you were fed into locally, and that would have kept me around a bunch of hood rats and white trash, for the most politically correct term I can use. I would say something else normally, but I went to another school
You
with a
don't,
complete
you don't need to say politically correct on this show.
and a completely different socioeconomic background. I'm going to school with kids whose parents decided that they weren't going to send them to the private school because that school in the city was so esteemed that they wanted their kid to go there instead. So no, it's a really big difference. And I spent 4 years around this, and I got so angry. I was like, "Why did you guys have me if you couldn't at least give me the a chance to not have to wake up at 5 a.m. to go to school for a better life?" Hey, and that's the wrong way to think about it. You don't know that
But
when
it's
you're
natural
18,
when you're
19,
young.
20,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that allowed me. I focused a lot on the negatives that my mother did for a very long time, and as my mind shifts. I don't have a feeling about it, like, either way, but I can't forget that I still had to figure some things out. There's little things that you witness growing up, like, I witnessed my mom get arrested, right? And I'm like 11 years old, and I'm like, "You can't go and fight this person in the street." I'm trying to hold her back, and she goes anyway, and at that point at 11, I said, I have to figure this thing out on my own, right? And that has an effect, right? And then as in high school, I have to work to make sure I have enough money to. I don't have to worry about my rent, but I do need to worry about feeding myself because now I live a different life. I'm trying to better myself, so I'm always playing sports. I'm always doing something after school. I try to stay out of the house as often as possible because my mom just had a different idea of what was valuable. She thought like cleaning the house and listening was valuable. And I'm like, yeah, this ain't gonna help me make any money in the future. You probably should be supporting me, playing football. And then that was about. I think I played every sport. I had a job. Plus, I think I did some club. I was in a musical though, not as a performer. I did the stage crew thing. I never sang or anything like that. But I did a lot of these things so I could avoid going home. And in doing so, it kept me in a very positive, different environment. That while it did build a certain level of resentment for where I came from, I got to see a very different way to living. And I thank my lucky stars to this day that I had that experience because a lot of kids never get to see something different. They never know there's a different way to live, to exist. Just this even in a home life interacting. Like I never seen a mother and a father interact and like raise a kid. Like, so there were like things I'm figuring out a whole new language. Like, why don't you just go to your mom? Your dad said no. It doesn't really work that way, right? and kids who grew up with two parents know that instinctively, maybe by the time they're 10 or 11, if the parents are any good at what they do. I'm having trouble figuring this out, but those are just little things like that. And I think it worked out really well though.
And so when you were young, just going back to as far as you can remember to, your late youth, did you have a sense of what you wanted to do? Obviously, you wanted something different from what you had, but did you have a sense of like what you wanted to be when you grew up?
I knew, it's funny, man. I remember when I was like, I think this lasted till I was like 10. I wanted to be a bus driver. I was just obsessed with the bus schedules, man. They had a map and a timetable and all those like quantitative measurement things, and your brain just goes, "This looks cool. I want to do this." And this guy seems like he's got a stable job and he has to sit and drive. But no, but as I got older, I really took to writing. I really liked writing. I liked playing RPGs, and I wasn't really a video gamer, but I liked RPGs because you would sit and you would read the story, and through that, I would get a better feel for how a story was told and things like that. So I wanted to be a writer, and then I got to high school, and these kids who had just a better education from birth, I'm watching them just kick my ass, man, and I lost a lot of confidence in said ability to write. And on top of that, I was getting beat down in math too. Because you know what I study, so I got to write an article to like explain how this happened, but I lost a lot of confidence in my ability to do math because I thought I was a smart kid, and then I get to high school, everyone else is like not just kind of intelligent, but they can like go home and study, right?
Yeah.
Instead of like taking a bus for an hour and a half each way to school. So I was, failing my math classes too. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I when I turned, I think high school, I was like, oh, I'll play sports, and then sports, went as far as they were going to go, at least at that time of my life for high school. And then I was just kind of wandering around for a little while, but I didn't have a clear idea outside. Like I
Did
always
you
knew I
plan to
wanted
go
to
to
write.
college?
Okay. The college story is interesting too, and how that developed. Everyone says go to college. That's one thing they shove down the throats of children from poverty, especially the older millennial generation. We got that big. It was college is a way out, right? And for the most part, like I like to argue the numbers with people, but to understand the numbers, you got to understand the nuance behind the numbers. Yes, the average earnings for a person who goes to college, as opposed to one who doesn't, is higher. But what they're not factoring in are so many other jobs that are available to you. And now, I mean, it's so inflated. They also don't factor in the ROI, like how much you spent to get that degree,
Yeah.
whatever. But that story is what we'll tuck that off to the side because that's relevant. I did go to college the first time I went. I played football really well, and I was being looked at by Georgetown University. I was going to go to Georgetown, and my grades were just not what they needed to be, and I wasn't sure what to do. And everyone was like, "You should go to University of Rochester," because they were just like they
Hey,
took
that's a
some
great
interest.
school.
That is a great school. I thought it was a great school, and I just my plan personally, I was going to try and walk onto the University of Pittsburgh and play football because they were Division One program.
One of the greatest of all time. My
But
dad still talks about that. He's from Cleveland, and
oh,
Pitt
right.
used to be one of the
That's what
greatest.
Dan Marino and
Yeah.
Kenley Saragusa win, all these guys. But I just kept hearing go to U of R, and they were offering money, so I went. But I wasn't ready for college, man. I'll never forget what a guy said to me because I always like carried myself kind of the way I carry myself now, which apparently comes off as intelligent. Guy said to me, he goes, after the first semester, he goes, I don't understand this. You're one of the most intelligent guys on the team, and you got the lowest GPA. And that was not an exaggeration. I had the lowest GPA.
On the football team.
Yo, yeah. And it didn't get much better the next semester. And by the third semester, I did the old, I dropped out, but it was more like, you can't fire me. I quit because they were about to kick my ass out. So I left. And I had, at this point, I still got no confidence in my ability to do anything with math or writing.
But what were you trying to do then?
Okay, so at that point, I was going to study. I was taking a bunch of foreign language classes. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I said I'm going to try a foreign language. That's what I was going to do.
All right, bro. We got to stop here. We got to stop here for a second because I am so confused by you because it or just impressed, I guess is a better term. Like, so my dad's a Chinese historian. He speaks Chinese, Japanese. He knows Latin. My
Man,
mom's
that is a rough language, Chinese.
Yeah, my mom speaks French and Spanish. Both good writers. My dad's a writer. He's a professor. Language never worked for me. But I was a good writer, and that was kind of my thing. Like I knew I could write. But quantitative stuff, like not a chance. Like I failed algebra, I failed biology. But it seems like you've always had a knack for both. Like you kind of got the right brain and the left brain working, and you were just trying to figure out
Trying
which.
to figure it out. And then on top of that, I always tell people that intelligence is really nice. Like it really helps if you're smart. At the very
I
least,
can
your
agree with
life
that.
is going to be really hard if you're dumb.
Yeah.
And even harder if you don't know you're dumb. Like the people
Yeah.
who are like dumb, but like they kind of know not to overstep their bounds, they're gonna be okay. But it's the people that just keep that, they're like trying to dunk and they're like 5'4", and they're like,
Yeah.
I saw Muggsy Bogues do it once, I want to try it. But no, I think so. On paper, this is one of those luck things, right? You get lucky. I was in a study. They wanted to track low income kids and see how they developed and grew, and they found out at an early age that I'm working with roughly 125 to 130 IQ, which is like, yeah, that's pretty good.
It's
But
far
you
above average.
but you got to be in a good environment.
And that's how you ended up in that magnet school, was
Yeah,
that you had already tested and shown the
part of that,
potential.
yeah. But you got to be in a good environment,
Right.
and I'll never forget. The only B I got in math in high school was geometry in ninth grade. After that, I
Well,
got
that's a
smoked.
funky one.
And you know why I got smoked? Because when I was in school, my middle school, my elementary school, they spent more time breaking up fights and kicking out kids than they did teaching. So I walked in with as Richard Feynman calls it, fragile knowledge. I didn't know anything. Like if the problem didn't look exactly the way it looked, I couldn't do it. And they exposed that, and I didn't have the confidence or the ability to learn like I have now. So you know what I said? I said, you know what, forget this. I got a great memory. I'm gonna go do things where I can just memorize stuff. I don't have to learn anything. Never mind the fact that one of my like claims to fame, there were like 6 levels of Japanese in high school, and I didn't have any prior Japanese, and I went from level 1 to level 4 in a year because I wanted to. But part of it was just learning a new character system.
No. I lived in Japan for 6 months when I was a kid. I know 3 words. I maybe learned 6 when I was there. Yeah, going back to my language retention, I did international school, but oh man, even for like 9-year-old, I mean, I couldn't grasp it. So that's amazing.
Well, they're pictograms, and the kanji are made up of something like 217 individual
Yeah.
ones, and how they put together. But how it comes together makes sense. And then the real issue is like in Japanese, and I think in the Altaic language system in general, which composes Korean and Turkish, that you can just place an article anywhere, and that is fine. Typically, the verb comes at the end, but maybe not. And then, but it was a fun time. I could memorize stuff, and I just thought that was like gonna be the end all, be all. And then I just kept having these little failures because I didn't have discipline. I didn't have a structure for anything. I didn't have any role models for that. And so, I'm walking around thinking not really an idiot per se, but like I did not think that I was going to be able to do anything with math or language or writing. I thought, okay, I'll
You
figure
knew
it out.
you knew you were smart, but you kind of questioned that ability to develop intellectually to do what you wanted to do.
I always tell people, intellect is, like I said, intellect is nice, but it really helps if you have discipline and ambition. Otherwise, because temperament's important. Temperament and the intangibles, they say.
So speaking of determination, because I think we're about to move into a very interesting period in your life, I want to go back to the crackhead mentality that you always talk about on Twitter, that I think is so funny. Hustling like a crackhead, don't get outworked by a crackhead. Talk me just through that, those experiences, because I'm sure that's from living in the projects, right?
Nah, so okay. Every time someone asks me this, yeah, I always remember where that tweet that everyone talks about, where that came from. I just, you remember from your life, and you tell some stories, and sometimes the story catches. But I'll never forget, my mom was walking me. We were walking to the bus stop some morning, and when the crackhead came scattering by, she looked at him and she said, "Man, that guy's been out here for like 4 days, man. I ain't seen him again. He look like he ain't slept, he ain't ate, just chasing rock." And that always stuck with me. I just thought it was, it was funny. And then it wasn't until I got older and I decided to put it into a humorous format on the internet for people to enjoy. But a lot of the stuff when I talk about the crackheads and things like that, so my sense of humor has always been a little on the edge. But on top of that, I figure out how to cope with my surroundings. I live like one of my earliest memories, man. We was getting babysat I mean, I don't know if she was just a heroin junkie or a crackhead or whatever, but I know she was because one day we went to the house after daycare or whatever, and I thought it was a squirt gun, and I picked it up and I squirted it. It turns out it was a syringe full of heroin, and I couldn't figure out. It took me for a long time to know and understand why my mom was like yelling and arguing with her like years. But then it was like, oh, wait, mom, that was heroin. Yes, that was a problem. And I mean, we were over there another time and they was all smoking crack. I mean, like, you see these, and then we moved to another project, and that project, wasn't getting babysat by crackers anymore. We were old enough, but now we live next to like a straight, like an authentic crack dealer, like stamp of approval, everything. Like junkies coming in all hours of the night, man. And then that's just like what in the proximity. Everyone like noodles, a crackhead in the projects, man. They go together, man. Just like you know somebody who went to jail, you know a crackhead, and that's kind of how it goes. But I got to just be up close and personal with them, and I decided to convert a lot of that to humor because it's, you ever heard that old saying like life's a tragedy for those who feel and a comedy for those who think. I feel like that sums up my reaction to a lot of that. I looked at it and I go, okay, well, I mean, it sucks. I'm here. Let's have a joke. Let's make a laugh about it, right? Another quote that I always reference about this period of my life and where these crackhead things come from is, you can either laugh a little or cry a lot. It's really hard to do both. Like authentically be sad and be happy. So you pick one. And I've always been a big believer, no matter what. I've always been a believer in kind of controlling your emotional responses. If you can do that, you're gonna keep yourself out of a lot of trouble.
It's a superpower.
Yeah.
That is where my life changed. At 12, I got hormonal, rebelled. Often felt like there wasn't a lot of love in my household. Talking about the wayward youth, I went to public schools, I went to private schools, I went to universities, colleges. I've been around, the 0.001%, and I've been around, kids from the same backgrounds as you, and going back to what you're talking about at the very earliest is, I've seen wayward youths and wayward individuals at every level of the income bracket. And there's so many factors outside of just like, your wealth or the town you grew up in. It's really, it's so the environmental factors really run the gamut. But I think one thing that changed my life was, actually came from eating mushrooms for the first time when I was 14 years old. So I was like angry, depressed, suicidal ideations. I had this moment, first time I've ever eaten mushrooms, ate like 3.5 grams, a massive amount for a scrawny little 14-year-old boy. But I had this moment where I was like, I can choose to be happy or I can choose to be sad. It is my choice to look at life either positively or negatively. There's always going to be someone that's worse off than me. There's always going to be someone that that's in a worse situation. And so who cares if I'm getting arrested or suspended from school or kicked out? That doesn't matter because, I can make the most of any situation. And my mom was reflecting on this a couple of years ago, how, it didn't matter how many, I got arrested 7 times, kicked out of so many schools, but every time it happened, literally the next day I would be up and ready to go. Like I would just be like, fuck it. It's happened. It's behind me. What you try to do is learn the lessons from whatever circumstances you've been in. But if you have the right attitude and you try not to dwell, my father's a big dweller, and I saw that. I'm like, this is an unhappy dude. He's had a good life, and I'm probably a big reason why he was unhappy. But you can choose whether or not to be unhappy. Like of course there's depression, of course there's circumstances outside of your control. But the attitude that you take when approaching your life, and the more analytical you are, the more you're able to kind of evaluate or rationalize reasons to be happy, the better off you are. And I think a lot of people just get caught up in their circumstances.
Absolutely, man. I was listening to you talk about that, and I thought about, I've only done shrooms one time, and your experience sounds a lot different than my experience. I was 18 is when I was at the University of Rochester, and there was this girl I had fallen in with. And she was like, "You want to do some shrooms?" And I was like, "I'm not gonna be a bitch. Yeah, I'm gonna do some shrooms." Like, so we showed up, And she had the shrooms. And I didn't know this because I wasn't part of the culture. Normally you take them with like some bread or some peanut butter,
Yeah.
right? So brought out the bread, brought out the peanut butter, spread the peanut butter down, put the shrooms in. I took a bite of my shroom sandwich. And I was like, wow, this shit is instant, man. My lips are tingling. She was like, what the fuck are you talking about? I said, man, my lips are tingling, man. It's crazy. She was like, all right. And then I felt a little different and I knew what it was. I said, yo, I thought I told you I was allergic to nuts. So yeah, I got my roommate switch the bread. I'm like, okay, turns out our roommate didn't switch the bread. And I ate 2 pieces of banana nut bread.
And you're deathly allergic.
Deathly allergic. So I'm walking around the campus all day, tripping, but my body is like, I mean, I probably should have went to the hospital.
Right. It means you're having an allergic reaction and you're having food poisoning, which is what mushrooms are. That's not a fun combination.
Oh, man.
That's not going to put you in the right mindset to be tripping balls.
That happened. Yeah, that was one of those things that happened like 18 years ago at this point. And I still remember the discomfort, like staring at the Genesee River, going like, man, this is cool and wavy. I think I'm about to throw up in it and just die. But that was my one-time experience with the shrooms.
One bad first experience can really be an unfortunate have really bad ramifications for people that could otherwise benefit from trying again.
Yeah, I've been reading a lot about the therapeutic benefits of psychedelics and how it's allowing people to interact and deal with trauma. That and MDMA as well, or help allowing people to be able to go, okay, this happened, and instead of like putting it and locking it in the room, being able to go deal with it. I think I had an experience when I was 2 or 3. My sister was born, so I would have been 3, but she wouldn't have been much older. We were kids, and I watched the kid get hit by a car. These motherfuckers were escaping a robbery or something. They came around the block. Fortunately, one of the things my mom said was, don't cross the street without, me. And so there was the ice cream man, Good Time Charlie across the street. I didn't go across the street. This kid did, though, and he got wiped out. And
that will imprint the lesson of not crossing the street.
Here's what's crazy about this.
Jesus.
I don't remember blocking it out, but my mom remembers I couldn't talk about it. I don't remember it happening for almost 10 years. My mom just said, no, we're not ready. It's going to stay somewhere deep and dark.
Repressed, yeah.
And then one day I just woke up, I was like, yo, who the hell is Rodney? I don't remember what the guy's name was, but it all came back to me. I was like, oh, that's the kid that these things happen. And people have to deal with them. So that's an example.
Well, and those that's where the power of psilocybin or ayahuasca can be, or MDMA can be really powerful because, but especially the deeply psychedelic ones, so like mushrooms and ayahuasca are really powerful because what they'll do is they'll bring out those repressed memories, those traumatic memories that you may not even know are affecting you.
Right.
But they're preventing some level of spiritual or emotional growth, and it will force you to confront that memory that you may not remember since you were 2 or 3. Traumatic memories, and you'll be like, okay, this happened, and you develop an acceptance for something that your brain's been trying so hard to block. But now that you can overcome that through this psychedelic experience, you're able to grow in other aspects of your life. And that's what's so extraordinary about them. It's why I'm so passionate about psychedelics. Like I told you, I'm raising a psychedelic venture fund right now because I think we're going through this renaissance where, academics, medical professionals, the psychiatry community are just all like, oh my God, we've been repressing this incredible medicine that, humanity has had for pretty much all of our existence that we blocked out with the drug war, but can benefit our society, which is in the middle of this incredible mental health crisis and an addiction to pharmaceutical drugs that, are proving to be less effective than just eating some mushrooms.
Yeah.
Like, a microdose of mushrooms they're finding, like not even a psychedelic experience, 2 or 3 times a week, a small little dose is as effective as taking 3 Prozacs a day. Like
Yeah.
it's crazy. But it's something that, I think, having conversations like these are so important because there is a high level of discomfort amongst many, especially folks that have had a negative
Hmm.
experience.
I think uh, this place we live in, this world, in this time period, it is so magical. I mean, that's what it is. It's magic. If you were born in the year 1900 or something, and somebody picked you up and plopped you down in 2021, you'd be like, "What the fuck? There's metal floating in the sky, and people can move that box with people in it with a button, and wait, you can see him in the phone that you're holding." And it's so magical, and that's across all realms, not just the electronic technology, but the medicine and the chemicals that we can create. And I think what happened with all new things, um, there was a split. There was a dark use of it, and there was a light use of it. If you want to like use um, somewhat mystical terms about it, but we want to be more. We want to be more precise and constructive in the destructive use. People forget the cocaine originally started as something to help
Medicine.
medicine,
Yeah.
right? And then someone said, you know
Heroin too.
what? Yeah, you know what we can do with this shit? We can get paid if we just get people hooked and we cook it up in a lab. I don't right. Um, and psychedelics don't initially have that, I think don't have that initial addictive factor, that street value or
No,
something
but
to
what
it.
they
But
can do is they can convince someone that war is unethical and they're not going to Vietnam, and that
yeah.
was scary.
And
That
the right, it changes. You can look at if you want to have a good idea of what like is good for power and bad for power. Look at what is outlawed and what you can't control. I mean, you're big into the Bitcoin space, and I am by no means an expert. One thing I completely understand from what I've read is that when you remove the government's ability to control you in one way or the other, and because they don't have to control you, they can also destabilize effectively the same thing, right? Well, in terms of the outcome, you either control how it goes, or you prevent another outcome from occurring. It's very good. So when I see the government respond to a thing with such disproportional power to the threat that it represents, or they expend so much energy and effort on a thing that they like someone said, why don't we just go and call a game and say that drugs won the war on drugs? Well, they have, and the government knows this, but there's just so much. Fortunately, there are places like Portugal, where I spend a lot of time, where they were like, okay, we're gonna treat all the hard users like
Yeah.
they have a problem, not like criminals, and that's going to change the entire relationship
harm
with
reduction
everything.
rather
Right.
than trying to do harm
Well,
prevention.
not only harm reduction, but like I was saying, there's a point where it's useful and a point where it's abused. And I always tell the story. I got a buddy who smoked crack like 3 times and said, you know what, this ain't for me. Right, walked away. Very different experience than what I've observed, but very different environment that he's smoking the crack. And so there's this trauma that this is what they say, what they think. There's trauma that makes you more susceptible to addiction. And so if you use a substance that normally gets you addicted in a healthy place or at a healthy amount, there's likely maybe some good, at the very least, not as much bad that can occur. And everything just got swept up in that. Now places are going, okay, let's start addressing the real issue, which is not
The drugs,
which is not the
it's the
drugs, it's the
traumas. Yeah,
people. Because
yeah.
when you focus on the drugs, you don't focus on the humans that are using the drugs, and it's
Right.
very easy to turn that human into a bottom line on a spreadsheet
Well,
or a statistic.
and this is why I say psychedelics saved my life, because I started taking them once a year from the time I was 14 to 18. Then I took them more. But my experience, especially with psilocybin mushrooms, but also with LSD, those experiences allowed me to confront the trauma that I had from when I was younger, but also in real time. And all of a sudden, I wasn't building up and,
Yeah.
and looking for those coping mechanisms. So by the time I was 18, and I had done most of those substances, you know, I I was probably 17. I tried heroin and I tried cocaine. Did them both once. I was like, yeah. I was like, you know what? I know these are bad. It's not that great. I don't really need this. I think I know what I like. I know what's safe. And I was like one of those people where I didn't have any traumas I was trying to mask. I was just interested. And so I
Right.
tried these substances that were highly addictive, but there was no need for them. I had a level of inner peace that I've grown over the years, but I wonder, I look back, if I hadn't taken like mushrooms or LSD, I was still on that path to trying cocaine and heroin either way. But if I hadn't addressed those traumas, and I also had therapy, I was a messed up kid.
But you dealt with it.
I was dealing with it. And so for me, substances have rarely ever been a coping mechanism. They've been more a tool than anything. And I think that's what we need to begin to think of medicine as, whether it is Prozac or like psychiatric drugs or it's psychedelics. Right now we're just trying to like keep people complacent. Like that's what so much of modern psychiatry and psychiatric
Keep
drugs
them
are.
from being a problem.
Yeah, it's just like instead of actually addressing the sources of someone's depression, just give them pills that keep it from being too bad.
Yeah.
And rather than trying to actually solve the underlying causes of that depression, allow people to grow past it, because it is something you can grow past. And that's why, I think the psychedelic movement is so important, because it's not about just finding a coping mechanism. It's actually it's a solution and an arsenal of tools you use to address the underlying issues.
Yeah, and then you know what? It's not just a chemical. It's not just drugs. Food can turn into the thing. I used to, the one of the cool things about growing is you get to go, you get to learn something about the way you thought about a thing, and you go, man, I was an asshole, and like. But if it's a learning curve, and you go, okay, I don't think that anymore. And what is this about specifically? That show, My 600-Pound Life, that was a great source of entertainment for me. It's a great source of entertainment and posts and tweets, whatever, make fun, because it's an easy target to make fun of. And then one day I said something on Twitter. It's not like I was seeking this information out. Someone said that something like 60% of the people who end up on that show were victims of child sexual abuse. And this coping and eating is a way to cope and to keep themselves from looking attractive and feeling like attention ever comes on them. And I went and looked this up and I verified. I was like, wow, that's crazy. Overnight, my attitude towards it completely changed. And then that led me to see that anything can turn into a coping mechanism. When I talk to people in AA and I hear why they are where they're at, and and then they decide to share, you see a commonality, and the commonality is this broken home and this desire to fit in. That's how I ended up. I wanted to be approved. I wanted to be liked. And if you're not comfortable with yourself, you'll do whatever you can, and then before you know it, you have a new thing that makes you feel loved. It's no different than being part of a gang, right? I mean, the gang part of it is the protection, but the other part is
the acceptance.
There's some people that accept me. This is who I am. I ain't got to be somebody else. Same way with substances, and it can be anything from food to drugs to gambling, whatever gives you what you're missing internally, or makes you think you're attaining it, because it's not really giving it to you. It's just it's a Faustian bargain, kind of, and you take that and you go and you get a good thing for a little while, and then you don't.
so that is, I think that's the perfect segue into what happens after you drop out of Rochester. You're what?
Oh, okay.
You're 19 at this point?
19, yeah. So I drop out, and I ain't doing shit, man. Like it's actually like I'm kind of
You're back in
embarrassed.
Pittsburgh?
Back in Pittsburgh, I'm effectively homeless at that, right? And what I mean is, like, I don't have an address, and there's no place that I can lay my head.
No, you're not going back to your mom's house every night.
Definitely not.
But that's what I mean. I was in that at the exact same. Well, I think I was still 18, but at 18,
it's funny as hell. Actually, I wrote about this like a year ago. My mom was on my mailing list. This was the email that made her sign off, because not everyone can cope with another person's interpretation.
Someone else's
And
reality.
and so she was like, I'm just tired of reading this stuff. I support everything you're doing, but I'm tired of reading like your childhood was so bad. I'm like, fucking got robbed, man. Like we like from the house with crackheads. You sold drugs, well, not drugs, but no drugs, but like I mean, if that's not bad, well, what is?
Yeah.
But it's
I learned to stop writing about my parents a long time ago.
I continue to, but it's part of my thing. But I wrote about my homeless period, and she was like, I don't know why you just didn't come home, and I'm like, and that
my parents don't.
Is the issue.
My parents don't tell me that. When I got kicked out of college, like literally a month into my freshman year, they were not having me.
Yeah.
I was homeless, and they were okay with that.
My mom was. She's a mom.
Yeah.
But at this point, I'm homeless. I actually remember it was probably a good 6 months where I was like stealing food to like survive and eat. But I am a surviving person. I understand that there's a risk, and I'm trying to get out of that risk. So I got a few rinky-dink jobs. Worked at GameStop. Worked at Science Center, worked at Starbucks.
Yeah, I did all the things. I worked for a vending machine company. I worked for a moving company. Worst job I ever had, Lowe's self-checkout. Because a hardware store and self-checkout just don't go together.
Man, you basically just taking time. I mean, to eat it up. But during this time period, I'm also like developing a bit of sour grapes syndrome. And I'm going on this tirade against college, and I'm talking about how pointless it is, and I'm gonna go do X and Y and Z. I think one of my schemes, I was trying to win the lottery at one point. But I made the mistake one day. So the girl I was dating at the time, her mother was a college professor at the University of Pittsburgh, no less. And I would talk to anybody about my views on college that I could, including a college professor. It's brilliant. And one day she goes, okay. And I think I was 21 or 22. She goes, all right, let's pretend you're correct and college is pointless. Then why don't you show me what you've done for the past 4 years besides eat my food? And threw me out. And I went home and I cried because it hurt, because she was right. But you take a moment to shed your tears and you go, okay, well, what am I going to do about this? And I realized she was correct. I had nothing to my name, nothing to say. If I died, what were they going to write in my obituary? He played football and drank a lot. There you go, right? So I said, what am I going to do? And I narrowed it down to two things. And one was the military, or YouTube had just come out big around this point, and they put videos up, and I was like, oh, fighting, that looks cool. I can do that. And I looked, and I went back and forth, and I said, well, if I have to do the military, then I got to leave, and I was still kind of emotionally stunted, not really ready to go away. That was one of the issues with college. Plus, I just didn't want to get shot, man. Like, that's just the truth. He was just going in Iraq. And
you had avoided being shot for the first 18 years of your
life.
Like
Legit avoid it, man. Watch drive-bys. I got the whole tuck and roll game down, man. So I said, I'm going to do the fight thing. And so I went and found just the gym and started training. And my mentality when I started, I said, I'm not going to quit. What I will do is someone will have to tell me, who has a lot of experience, that this is just not going to be for me, or I have to get injured. But I'm not going to quit. We'll just see what happens if I just consistently go. So I went into the gym. I was 23 or 22. I knew where I was living when I started fighting. So I was 22. Wow. I've been trying to figure out exactly how old I was for the longest time about
when
this.
You started fighting?
And I know I now know I was 22. And so that was either 22 or 23.
Well, I'm glad you came on the show.
So 22. And I started going, and I had, a little success. I knocked the kid out in my first fight. And I just kept going and going, and take the losses, the gains, the losses, the gains, the losses, and I just keep getting a little better. And one day, I reached an interesting kind of plateau, and I had to make some changes. And when I made those changes in my career, then it really skyrocketed. I won the state title, 2011 for Pennsylvania. Then I went to the national Golden Gloves, and I placed. I think I had like a 6th place finish.
So this is amateur.
It's amateur. And then once that happens, I get recruited by a group. That's why I lived in LA, because there was this group out here running. It was called All American Heavyweights, and they were trying to take former Division I athletes and turn them into
Pros.
boxers.
Yeah.
Well, I had beat the guy that they were investing in. It's just, with when I tell this story, I always go, that whole luck is when preparation meets opportunity is like so true. Because I trained, like one time I was like, oh, I'm going to nationals. I trained my ass off. I mean, like more than I ever had probably at that point. And, I was ready for anybody. I had no idea in the first round I'd draw California. And California was represented by a guy named Dominic Brazil, who ended up going on to represent us in the Olympics, fought for the world title twice against Wilder and what's that other guy? Anthony Joshua. They look a legit athlete, 6'7", played pro for like a season, but still made it to the league,
Oh, NFL?
Yeah. And we fought, and when we met, I beat him 4-1, and they were just taking aback, his people, because they had tape on like everybody, and just that level where my ability went from nothing to where it was, or rather my plateau, I finally broke through it. They didn't have anything on me prior. That was my first national experience, and I went on and fought 2 more times, and then the last night, the guy, I think his name's Paul Kane, he's like, "Yeah, man, great job. You want to come on and check it out? See how long you last?" Because they were cutting cats. Like, there was no guarantee just they brought me out there I was going to stay. So they brought me out there, though, in May 2011. I ended up staying till September 2012. And the only reason why I left is, Dominic makes the Olympic team. He goes on to represent us in London. But they're like dicking him around, and he decides he doesn't want to take their offer for a professional signing, so he ends up in signing.
Well, and you can't box in the Olympics if you're a pro, right?
Well, okay, so at that point, no, you couldn't. That rule has since changed, but nobody from America really wants to be the first one to take that arrow and be like, I'm gonna do it, because the athletes and the coaches alike are like, what's the point of getting rid of that? Because that's the thing that kind of drives the amateur program in this country. Because like in other countries, they subsidize their athletes, so there's a good reason to go fight pro. A paycheck, right? I mean, amateur, a paycheck, right? Plus, they take you around the tournaments, and USA doesn't support the athletes, like, at least in the country at all.
No, because they really rely on the NCAA for a lot of those athletes.
It's just not there yet. And even in the Olympics, it's not a big sport, so no one's really putting the money behind it. It's not like USA Gymnastics, which I believe is like the most watched the most watched Olympic event of women's gymnastics. So in boxing, there was none of that. So they got all these outsiders coming in, and Dominic left. And when Dominic left, all the funding left. So they were just slowly but surely whittling it down. There were 5 guys in the end. They kept 2. No, they actually kept 3, and 1 got injured. Of the 2 they kept, 1 actually did go on to become world champion, Charles Martin.
Like a gold medalist in the Olympics?
Well, as a professional.
Okay.
Charles Martin went on to become a titleist. I actually beat Charles twice as an amateur. That's easily to find. And Charles is a great guy. It's just like, I gotta say I'm not a scrub, and I could be, fight and beat some guys. And Dominic. And so that's who they didn't keep Dominic, because Dominic left. That's Dominic left. They kept Charles and this other guy, John Hamm.
Now, were you trying to be part of this crew?
Oh, absolutely. Because first of all, as an amateur, you don't make any money.
Right.
Unless you're luck into something like this, which may never happen again. They were paying for my apartment out here in LA and my food, plus was it like $3,500 a month? Something like that. So it was good. All I had to do was train. Like, for the first time in my life, I just trained. So I trained like an animal 2 times a day. And then from there, this out here is where I ended up winning my national title at the Police Athletic League tournament, which is one of the big tournaments they were having. So I made leaps and bounds. I grew in terms of my ability when I got out here. And so this was all because I was like, I need to go do something with my life, because I'm not doing anything. And so I started that, and I just kept going.
So when do you become pro?
I turned pro January 26, 2013. It was my first fight against a guy named John Hill. He was 4-1 to southpaw. And I actually thought I was going to lose the fight. And
that's not a good mentality to go into the fight.
Well, okay, I didn't think I was going to lose the fight.
But you were nervous.
but because he hit me and I wasn't, because the change. And I think this is the same in all sports. The change from the amateur to professional level is there are some things you're just not ready for until you experience them the first time, and hopefully you survive them. And one of those is getting hit with a 10-ounce glove that is a professional glove. This is the big difference between the amateurs and the pro, at least in the heavyweight. And the amateurs, the glove is 12 ounces, and the padding is distributed so your hand is protected. In the professionals, it's a 10-ounce glove, not 12, so there's less padding, but that padding that's there is distributed as support around your wrist. So there's just more or less between your fist and the
other
guy's
person's
face.
Yeah.
And on top of that, the wrapping in the professionals is like a real wrap job. Like they put it on reinforced. It's like, man, it's probably an inch of gauze, and it is gauze, right? How hard could that be? Well, no, they pack it.
Yeah.
So that's not, so it was just like stack to stack. It'd probably be like 3.5, 4 inches, but because it's packed down and then wrapped around and just sturdy, so it's really hard to bend your wrist, which is for protection as much as it is for damage delivery. But they also put that glove on, and then what you're supposed to do, they call it breaking in the gloves, where you're just trying to wear down the edge, get as close as you can, but with the glove, the wrap can't show through the glove, but you
want to get the
ride
padding down as
you
want to
get it in,
possible.
and they call it breaking the gloves in. And then once you got the gloves broken in, the way you're supposed to tie it, you actually can't do this anymore. You should be able to pinch and tie, so it pinches back a little more. Instead of just tying around the wrist, you tie some right up here, and then it'll pull back so it pulls down. And now you can still kind of do it, but the end result, the wrap has to be down here, the strings that wrapped around. So no, I just got hit in the second round. I was like, oh man, this is
real.
This is serious. But I was able to get rid of him because he can do that to me, but I can do that to him too. The difference is I'm former national champ, man. I can fight. We can all fight. But yeah, it was like a good feeling at that point. And that 2013 we turned pro. And
all right, so you go pro, you win your first fight, kind of shaky, but you're feeling good. Do you feel like at this point this is like your passion? This is what you're gonna do. This is your career for the foreseeable future, or because you're still an intellectual guy. So.
Okay, so here's how this whole like the dichotomy has come about that so many people find interesting. So at this point, you have to say, in case I haven't been clear, my degree is that I eventually earned is in physics. And that is not a slouch degree. It's not something I could phone in. Like I was sitting there busting my mental ass, man. But the way that happened, when I was out here in California, I remember I got up one day. I said, I'm gonna go just get another session of the weights, go train. And there was LA Fitness right around the corner from the apartment complex I lived in Carson. So I got up, I was gonna go lift some weights, work out, check my phone. For whatever reason, my phone was dead, and I had to leave it behind. I guess I forgot to charge it. Normally, I'm walking over there, looking at my phone, playing games, key to the story. Also, my iPod is dead too. I'm like, what the fuck happened to me today, man? The technologist said, not today, brother. So I had nothing. So I'm walking, and I said, all right, well, I'm going to go work out. And I'm walking around the corner, and I'm looking straight ahead for the first time in a long time because I'm not in my phone, I'm not in my iPod, and some woman loses control of her car and comes up on the curve around, and I got the last minute jumped out the way. I think I still got a scar on my leg where I didn't get completely out the way. And I'm like, I'm not the guy that's going to tell you that there's a higher power. I mean, I believe there's a higher power, and I don't think that a higher power gives a damn about what's going on the planet. That's my general perspective of stuff.
It exists there, but not to control every part of your life.
But I think if for whatever reason not distracted by the noise, you're going to be in tune to certain things. And that day, thank goodness, I was in tune to something, or something was in tune for me.
Well, there's a special serendipity in that none of your devices.
Because I don't have any of my devices. Because I know if I had my phone, I'd probably been flattened. I wouldn't be sitting right here. I wouldn't be sitting right here either because I wouldn't be here or because I wouldn't have had a life.
It's serendipity that makes me believe in that higher power. It's those things that feel so wildly improbable, and yet they happen. And for a long time, I thought that was luck, and then I stopped believing in luck. And then
you start going, okay, here we go. because that happens, and I'm like, and it really bugged me. What bugged me is the fact that, like, under normal circumstances, I shouldn't have been able to get out the way. And so I said, all right.
Was the woman all right? Like,
Oh yeah, she was cool. But what ended up happening to me, I said, okay, I got to make sure I can do something else. Because boxing, one way or the other,
You
is
almost
gonna
lost
lead.
your legs, yeah.
And so now it's a thought right now. It's not really a thing, but now my
But it's
brain
in the
is
back
like,
of your
and I'm
mind.
like, okay, I might get California residency. This is before I knew I was getting shipped out, so maybe I can go to the state system for free and go to school
Oh,
for free.
so you also did the army at this time while you were
Oh
doing the
yeah,
boxing?
this all comes together. You'll
Okay.
see. So I let that I did, sit. I still go on, fight, keep training. I take my pro fight, whatever. But the pro fight was January, and I remember it would have been November, right? Because I remember the event that I missed or was trying to get to when this happened. I had another shitty job. I was working at T-Mobile, selling cell phones, $9.28 plus commission, which it didn't work out too much, and I wouldn't be able to survive that period of time where I moved back from California in September 2012, and when I shipped off to the Army June 4th, 2013. If it wasn't for the generosity of a friend, let me stay in a room that he had in his home for only $200 a month. And between what I was making at T-Mobile plus some unemployment hustle that I was running from California, even though I was in Pennsylvania, I was able to make it and I was able to survive. But one night I was working T-Mobile, and the way it works in these retail stores, we closed at 9:00. If you come in at 9:01, I'd be like, sorry, I forgot to close the door, but we're closed. But if you come in at 8:59,
You
I
have to serve
cannot
them,
kick
yeah,
you out until, like, I can't tell you to
until they
leave.
leave.
I mean, yeah, sure, they can, don't fire me if I do that, right? So this motherfucker comes in, and I'm like, all right, man, maybe get commission, sell a phone. Took like an hour, then buy a phone. I remember like sitting in my car in the cold snow going, yo, I am like smarter and better than this. I need to be able to do better for my life.
No,
I don't know.
retail can be very degrading.
Oh
And I
yeah.
mean, it was that self-checkout job at Lowe's that was like, I never want to be in this position
Right.
again.
It's like, yo, what the like, how did I get here? Like at this point,
Yeah.
I'm like, I was like 27 or something. And so I went in and was like, all right, how am I gonna improve my chances? All I knew was a job at this point. I need to get a better job. So I need to go to school. How am I gonna get money for school? And I start looking at like all these things because I know I need money to fight and train. And I know eventually something will catch.
But you're a pro. You said you're 27.
Oh,
You've been
we'll get to that part too,
okay.
man.
You're losing me chronologically.
There's a lot of moving parts, but it all makes sense.
Yeah.
I guarantee you. And so I decided, all right, I got to go to the Army so I can get money for school, and plus it'll be for my resume. So I do that, and I ship out, and there's a whole thing about that later. We'll talk about, but that's how that decision comes about. But I do it because I need to go back to school because I'm like, all right, now that seed that gets planted that you need to do something other than boxing and start building something up because one way or the other, boxing is going to leave you. Now I'm realizing it, and when I was looking for jobs, all the jobs that made sense to do, they all had math. It was crazy. Like all the top paying jobs were like engineering and
And they were
systems.
quantitative. If you want a salary job,
And then the top 15 jobs that were like highest job satisfaction all had numbers in them. So I said, okay, looks like I got to learn math, right? but at this point, something was very different from before, where I didn't have the confidence. Now I had been fighting for a long time. When I started fighting, I was an uncoordinated son of a bitch, man. I really couldn't do anything. I couldn't crack nothing. But now I knew what I could do. And I said, well, if I can do that for my body.
because you had trained so hard. You had found that determination and drive.
I said, if I can do that for my body, what's going to keep me from doing it for my mind? So I did a similar thing. I bought, I think it's like Schwam's something. I think this Schwam's is the series, but I bought, it's like 1,000 calculus problems, 1,000 physics problems. I got every notebook, every site I could find, practice problems. And I just, for a year, I just tore through these and I really stripped my knowledge down to where I fell behind when I was in the 9th grade, which was at geometry. And I started building systematically up from there. And it really, you want to talk about like, I said, wow, I know shit. But now I'm learning to know, and now I can go back in. And this time when I went back to school, while I was in school, the math part of my major and calculus, physics is so math intensive that every physics major gets a math minor automatically. All I have to take is like, I think 4 more classes and I get a math degree. I didn't get anything lower than a B on any of my math classes.
Because you applied that determination.
Took the whole calculus series and got an A, and then calculus is easy would bust my ass. Actually, that's not true. I had to retake differential equations, but I was taking different EQ. I was drilling, fighting. I had an internship. I mean, I just didn't have time to study, man. And these things you can't phone in. There's no memory here. You got to be like, really got to know it and then go solve it and do it, and it worked out. And I was having trouble there. But that's kind of how all that came together at the same time, is that I was trying to like make up for the wasted 20s. So I went back to school. I'm fighting pro. I'm in the Army drilling, doing my whole National Guard thing.
But tell me, you're pro. You have that near death or near accident experience. What leads you to the Army and to school? I know it's in the back of your mind, but and how did you end up at the T-Mobile store?
Well, the T-Mobile store, I had a buddy who actually lives right here now, which is funny. I had a buddy. He was when I told him, yo, man, that the program cut me, the one out here in Cali. I'm moving home, need a job. He's like,
because pro boxers don't really make much money unless they're at the very top.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, because I thought that's what you were hinting at. Ain't no money in fighting, man. I told a friend yesterday, I got together with coffee, because I hadn't because I think people have illusions. Like they see a thing and they think that thing
represents everything else related.
Not only represents everything else.
Do you think Floyd Mayweather making $100 million in a fight is representative of boxing?
Right. So they build this story based on the incomplete facts, but what they know and see, that seems to be the reality they build. I made, for my first 6 fights before I was signed, I think the most I made was $700. And that's 700 gross, right? After the taxes, after the manager, after the promoter. I mean, I didn't make shit, right? And then I got signed by Roc Nation Sports. And they were like, hopefully, I mean, you got a lot of connections. I don't know. I'm pretty sure I can talk about it now. It's been like 5 years. I got
yeah, you're fine.
Yeah, I got $4,000 a fight. Plus, they were paying me $1,000 a month as a stipend.
But how often did you fight?
6 times a year. And once again, 25%. Before I see anything, 25%.
You were in California, right?
Right. Well, I'm back in PA.
Oh, okay.
Because I moved back. But my manager, between my manager and my coach, automatically $1,000 before I see anything. So $3,000.
You're barely making what's minimum wage.
Then Uncle Sam want that bread. So Uncle Sam's gonna break it off my ass, and he's gonna do it 2 ways. He's gonna get me federally, and then he's gonna get me on the state. And if I fight in another state,
you're paying taxes there.
I'm paying taxes there too. So I'm walking home, and it's not a lot of money. When I fought on TV, and it was a horrible outcome, right? But let's talk about how much I got paid. Got $8,500 to fight on Showtime.
And how much you think that fight brought in for the promoters?
Oh shit, man! No one
millions.
No one, that's what the whole that's why we like. Well, some of us like what Logan's trying to do.
No, I mean
he's talking about how the promoters.
We were talking about this at dinner. I mean, look, Logan and Jake Paul have done more for boxing than anyone since Mayweather.
It's incredible, and what Mayweather and I think he's going to do more than Mayweather, because what Mayweather is a winner in the tournament, right. And so he doesn't want to share the prizes with everyone else. Paul is just like an outsider. Technology just continues to decentralize and break down these gatekeepers, and I'm really happy that because it wasn't going to come from within.
No.
The personality.
Boxing hasn't really evolved.
Yeah. And not only that, but the type of personality that's going to be, there aren't a lot of me's around, right? And then even when I fought, I think I had like 7,000 followers at the height when I was fighting, right? No, not really. I mean, that'd be enough to like monetize and pimp out because I know the game. But like, if you don't know the game, and most of these guys don't know the game, they're just going to show up, fight, and think fighting is what makes people love me. Like, no, they don't care about your fighting. This is something I figured out on a, I guess we'll call it a micro level locally. When I was, even though I only made $700 selling tickets, I gotta walk you through what selling a ticket to a fight is like. If you do your job right, it should be a short event. But when I was building my record up where I live in Pennsylvania, You gotta have they're just harder fights. It's harder to develop a fighter. It's a fighter in PA just because the commission has different regulations. It's a lot easier to go over the border to West Virginia. The thing is, West Virginia is about an hour away, so you got to convince people to spend $30 to $40, and you want them to because you got to make a cut of that. You got to convince them to spend that money, drive about an hour, and then be around other rowdy, crazy people. And if you do your job right, it's going to be short. And on top of that, you're asking them to give up a Saturday night. Usually, it's not a Thursday, not a Wednesday where ain't shit to do, but they're doing this instead of something else.
No, I mean, look, the Mayweather Logan Paul fight. It's the only boxing match I've ever considered going to.
Exactly. So you gotta be likable, but you can't be weak. You gotta be interesting.
You got to be entertaining. You know,
when you learn how to do that, then you get it. And a lot of these guys don't get it just by the nature of the type of person that ends up in the game. So that is how the income flowed in boxing. I mean, like, way more money now, like not even close. Like it's not even. It's so funny because if I could do it all over again, I would because at the end of the day, it could change me completely. You're talking about like the value of the hardships and the value of difficulty, and there are few things. In fact, I would say outside of combat training for special forces, there is nothing that forces you to develop on all cylinders, mentally, physically, emotionally.
Well, and this is what I never understood about you. Like, how is this guy a boxer? But in the past 3 months, I've gotten to know Khalil Roundtree, UFC fighter, Francis Ngannou, a new UFC world heavyweight champion, and then I had Lester Spellman, who was an amateur boxer. But and they're all going to be on the show. Lester, we've already recorded with. I think Khalil, we're doing to next week. But all of these guys, what blows my mind is when talking about what makes a man, these guys have a good idea. These guys, all these boxers and these fighters, these guys that you know, not to be crass, but I grew up in a household where I was taught that this is these are barbaric sports. Like,
oh yeah,
these are violent, grisly sports. They're not refined, but then you meet the people who do them, and the guys that really are good at it, and the guys that they train and they go through it. I have such a deep appreciation for the level of mental fortitude, physical toughness, and just sense of perseverance that it instills in the people who do it well.
Because check this out, there's a small amount of variance, but for the most part, the same thing that puts me down is going to put you down, is going to put anybody else down. It's all going to do the same damage to your physical constitution, to your body, to your organs, your externals, all that, right? So then what's the separating factor? Okay, so maybe there's a slight genetic one. Maybe you have a higher VO2 max, you recover better. Maybe you're a little more insensitive to pain than the average person, but for the most part, you're still human. There's not much difference. So where does the separation come from? It is up here. It is how and when I say up here, I guess I should be like here and here because it's two really things. There's the ability to process, learn, pattern, recognize, all that kind of thing, and then react to what you learn and take advantage of it in a way that I guess optimizes the outcome. Where you can do damage and you can decrease the amount done to you. But then there's the emotional side, and this is probably the most difficult one because I don't think, and definitely when I was a pro in the last half of my professional career, for sure, I don't think there was ever a day where I was like, oh man, I can't wait to get to the gym. We about to have ourselves a good old time. Like, no, that shit sucks. It's miserable. It is painful. There are other things you want to do, especially when you start having a little, like any kind of success. There's other things you want to do. You also have to kind of drill past what you think is sufficient, and you have to take someone else's assessment of your ability. You might feel like you understand how to throw this punch great and what to do, and they're like, "No, you're not really there." And you're like, "Yeah, I gotta keep drilling it." Yeah, you gotta keep drilling it. You want to lose? No, well, keep drilling it, right? A lot of people cannot do that. That kind of redundancy, that type of toughness, that is beyond especially today, what the average person is capable of doing. But it transforms how you look at everything else in your life. I just don't believe there's anything difficult. There are things that take a little time. There are things that take a little more knowledge than I have, or perhaps a few more resources. But you give me enough time, I'll figure it out, right? That's the story of a fighter's career. You give them enough time training, they'll figure it out, or they won't. And the negative feedback loop will have eliminated them. But the ones that stick around have a system for managing that, because we all lose. We all get our egos dragged to the mud. We all get our asses kicked. But the difference is, do we get up and come back? One of my favorite stories, when I'm trying to illustrate this point, there was a kid in my gym, amateur. I actually remember his name now, but I'm not going to.
Let's not throw anyone under the
I
bus.
couldn't remember his name. But this guy shows up. He's an amateur, and he wins, like, as far as non-fights, man. And we were like, this guy's going to be good. It's going to be great, man. He's got all the skills and the whatever, right? It's there. His 10th fight, I remember the place was the Soho Club. I had a fight there too. And he comes up to me and he's like, man, I invited like 3 girls I'm messing with here. I don't know what I'm gonna do after the fight. I was like, man, just worry about winning the fight, man. You got with that shit, right? Well, he goes out there and this guy walks through him. You actually rarely see an actual stoppage in amateur boxing, because the rules are different. Plus, there's so much padding. Rarely does someone, because when you get
beat up that much. Yeah.
Yeah, but I remember I watched him take a shot in the corner. It was like a quick bam to the body, and he like collapsed. It was like he folded over like an accordion. I never seen that from a body shot. Happened in an amateur, right? Get a text. Well, I didn't get a text. The coach got a text a few days later. And was like, yeah, I don't think I'm coming back. This ain't for me. And I'm like, I could understand if this was your first fight.
Think about it. He was so worried about those 3 girls, and he went home with none of them after that.
Ego, because there's a certain mental toughness, man. You gotta, if you're not willing to get your ego dragged through the mud, man, there's not really much hope for you in anything. So you're gonna keep doing easy stuff where that's not a possibility, and then when you encounter that, you're gonna shy away. A lot of people are afraid to do difficult things because that is a possibility. In fact, nothing's a guarantee, and we like to say this isn't one of them, but that's about as close to a guarantee as I can make you. Is if you do something difficult, you're gonna get your ass handed to you at some point. What are you gonna do when that happens, right? It happens to everybody, And so the cool thing about fighting is fighting just teaches you how to just to deal with getting beat up. It teaches you how to get better and learn something. Teach you how to operate under duress, which is something that no one can do today. Everyone needs to have a goddamn special space and special, like, safe space in the ring. Fucking safe space is that 1 minute you get between when it gets unsafe. And even then, if you're sucking, man, I had my coach wasn't happy to see me in the corner, man. He was like, what the fuck are you doing, man? It's a fight. I'm like, my bad, man. But it's that environment, constant stress that forces you to evolve, that forces you to adapt.
So let's talk about that evolution. So, I think you ended up 13-1-1.
13-1-1, yeah.
So you have a good career, but you realize it's just not. It's not the end all be all. So you're like, all right, I'm gonna go to school and join the army.
No. Remember, I'm in school and in the army at the same time. This is the part that always gets
no. But how do you get to that point from boxing? At what point do you decide to enroll in school and join the army?
I knew the numbers weren't on my side. I have never had a problem facing reality, and the reality is, even if I was successful, it's weird. The more you make per fight, the fewer times you fight. That's if you do things well at the right before you fight for a title, if you get that far, you should be fighting once or twice a year for maybe 6 figures, right? And that's before the government and everybody gets their cut. So I said, well, no, I can't do this forever. I had a late start anyway, so let me make sure I shore up my exit, because what I didn't want to be was bum. I saw the fighters' graveyard, as they say, right? Well, there's a bunch of guys that
trying to get fights, their records aren't good. Yeah.
So they come in as tomato cans. Yeah. We call them tomato cans because they get easily knocked over and red goes everywhere. There's the opponents and the contenders, guys that you can't win, but they're guys that shouldn't win. And if they do, great. We're not going to give you anything more, but you got to beat them. It's just a terrible place to be. Or you try to train guys and try and turn the dollar that way. And I saw that life, man. And I dealt with a hard life growing up. if it was within my control to make sure that couldn't happen to me, I was going to
You wanted
do
to
that.
create the alternative.
So I looked ahead, and this thing will come up again if we when we talk about the sobriety, that matrix again. What does Trinity say to Neo, when she's about to take him to meet Morpheus, and he's like, "Nah, fuck this, man, y'all crazy," and he tries to get out the car, and Trinity stops him and goes, "No, Neo, you don't want to go down that path because you know where it ends, and you don't want to be there." And I said to myself, I was looking, I said, "Well, I'm gonna lose one day, and I'm gonna get hurt one day." And look, that's accepting reality. Yeah, you can deceive yourself, but there are only who are undefeated fighters in history?
Yeah,
Joe
Floyd.
Calzaghe, Floyd Mayweather, and damn, I can see his name in my head. Rocky Marciano, right? Those are our three like undefeated high level fighters,
Yes.
right? But so it ain't gonna be me.
Yeah, the statistical probability is near zero.
So I'm like, okay, let me make sure I got a fallback plan. And my fallback plan is gotta make sure my life is okay, right? Now it's funny, the fallback plan wasn't to do what I'm doing now.
No, it wasn't to be great or incredibly comfortable. It's just survive.
I just wanted to make like $80,000 a year, man, and like have a good life. That's what I wanted, okay? But things went a different way, and I love how things are going. It's way better,
right? But so what happens first, army or school?
Army happens first because I need the army to go to school.
Got it.
Because the army pays for school, and then
so you chose the army over the other armed services
because they had the National Guard system, and I wanted to. And
you didn't want to deploy. Yeah.
I wanted to. Well, you still deploy in the Guard at times. But what I needed was the ability to go to school and still fight. This was
right. You were trying to do way too much.
I did way too much. There was a time in my life, we'll say end of 2014 to beginning of 2016, where it's a fucking blur, man. Like, I don't know how I did it. I don't know.
But this is when I started following you. I mean, you started being active on Twitter then.
Yeah,
I think I followed you to 2014.
The blog was growing. The school was killing me. The training is killing me. The army's killing me. Life's killing me. Still ain't talked about my social life because I didn't have one. Fortunately, I had just met the now fiance, but like great asset. Realistically, I mean, she wasn't like studying or in the gym, but it's always some food made. That was great. Coffee in the morning, good support system, and really understanding.
So when does the drinking stop? Because this is obvious. That was a pretty. What's it like? Actually, forget the drinking unless this answers it. What was rock bottom for you? What was the lowest moment? Is around this period like
the rock bottom for me? Because everybody hits the rock bottom, and it's just what do you do with that rock bottom? My rock bottom was realistically 2 years before I stopped drinking, right?
And when is this?
I stopped in 2013, and so that'd be 2011. Yeah, it's about 2011. That's when I found out because.
And that back then you're boxing.
I'm still fighting.
Yeah.
Oh man, dude, like you want to talk about like burning the candle at both ends? I mean, there were times where I would show up to the fight and I had a bottle. I remember when we got into the bum wines, being my drinking buddies, and the bum wines are like these. I mean, I actually don't know what they're actually called. I don't remember, but I know the names. Yeah. Wild Hours Rose, Night Train, Mad Dog 2020, Cisco, and something else. Man, there's another one. It's just it'll
remind me of all the 40-ounce the malt brew names. Funny ass names.
But
we used to drink those in high school.
I would have those bottles, have them in the bag. So when I got to the locker room, I had something to drink immediately after. I mean, I used to get it. I mean, it was a problem. You can tore up all the time, and then it started to affect my training because then I was either like, okay, let me schedule my training so I can go drink afterwards, or every occasion I'd be like, okay, it's the afternoon, let me drink before I go to practice, and then that's a bad deal.
Was that rock bottom?
No, it should have been. I mean, I think rock bottom for me, realistically, yeah. I guess it was the moment. It was the morning I woke up, and I don't remember how I got to my buddy's house after I had spent. Because when you enroll, when you enlist, which was just enrollment. When you enlist, You go away to basic training for 10 weeks, ain't no booze in there. And then you go to AIT, Advanced Individual Training, for your individual military occupational specialty, which is still part of TRADOC, the training system before you're fully in the Army, I guess. So there was my 10 weeks of basic training and then my 24 weeks of AIT. No drinking this whole time. I snuck away and drunk one time in the movie. I went and bought some booze and then I poured it into a cup in the movie theater. This is where we're at, man. This is like, so it wasn't for enjoyment. It was like, man, I need some booze, goddamn it. So I come back and I finish all my training up. It was like the second week of December. I come back and we go out and party. And I wake up at my buddy's house. I don't remember how I got there, but I know I drove and I was like, okay. And I had a real come to Jesus moment with myself, looked in the mirror and I said, okay, once again, it's that moment where I look and I go, all right, the next 5 years is going to pass. God willing, am I going to have more options or fewer options? What am I going to do to get this under control? I said, the booze is the issue. It's always been the issue. Let's cut this out now. I went to an AA meeting that day. Walked away from my AA meeting, interestingly enough, and I said, I'm not like those guys, right? which is arrogance, because 4 years later when I went back and I was talking to different people, I said, I'm just like you, and don't think you are not like them either, giving the same speech and ideas. But at that moment, I said, and that was December, I guess that would have been December 22nd because my sobriety date is December 23rd. I said, I'm done, quit, and left it behind. And that, I consider that my second birthday. I mean, my life prior to then and now.
So that's 2 years after you kind of feel like you're at rock bottom.
Oh, well, I know I'm drinking too much. Dude, I tell people.
But you had a moment before that probably where you thought I should stop
tons
drinking.
of moments.
Yeah.
Well, here's
that's the hardest thing about sobriety is that you may know you need to quit, but until you want to quit.
But until you're ready, otherwise, look, someone could tell me you got a problem. I'd be like, well, you got a problem for having a problem. I mean, that's what I used to say. Not effectively that you got a problem with me, but I used to say, well, would we be friends if I was sober? Trying to justify this. And now I still think some people I wouldn't have been friends with, but at least we would have parted and I would have been able to say, it's because I'm an asshole. And that was one of the things. I want responsibility for my actions. And when you're under the influence, there was a song, Blame It on the Alcohol. That's like a big thing. And that is like, I didn't want to be a part of that culture. I didn't want to be able to take my behavior and blame it on someone else. On top of that, or something else. And on top of that, if I do something illegal, it's not like I'm gonna be sitting there, the judge, but look, man, you gotta understand.
I was drunk.
It was drunk me that ran that guy over. You got the problem with him, not me. It doesn't really work that way. So I get control of these things and the life gets better. At the very least, life can get worse. Because once I stopped drinking, here's what's crazy. I used to say all of my personal problems in life, 95% of them are caused or exacerbated by alcohol. And I used to be proud of that. I said, if I could just stop drinking, I'd be great. Well, I did that. And what happened?
You still had the problems.
No, well, but I could deal with them.
Right. Without getting drunk.
Yeah, I could. Well, I had to.
Yeah.
I could deal with them. I could fight through them. I could figure them out.
So the sobriety enabled you to actually address the problems.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because like we were talking about earlier, when a lot of people, myself included, were using substances to cope. Now, not everyone white knuckles it and decides that they're going to stop the substance, and then they figure out other things. A lot of times it's like, let's figure out this shit. Oh, and that's why I drink. Let me put the bottle down. So no matter how you get there, I think the way I got there was a little tougher and harder, but it is what it is. But the outcome is the same, which is now I'm very in control. It's been a long time since I worry. It's a great feeling. You wake up and you don't have to worry if you texting some nonsense. You don't worry if you hit on somebody's girl you weren't supposed to hit on. You don't worry if you said something crazy. You don't have to worry about getting pulled over. When I'm driving at night, I see the police behind me. The only thing they got on me is I'm black, right?
Which is enough.
But my point is, man, I tell the story. I was pulled over on 4 separate occasions. This is why the lesson of this story is not drink and drive. The lesson of these following stories are the power of being likable and how you can't outrun the law of large numbers, which is, the law of large numbers for people who don't know is that if you have an event, say like flip a coin, and then it says, half the time it should land on heads, half the time it should land on tails. And you can see that and you go, okay, well, it was one on two sides. It seems about the same. If you flip that coin 10 times and it's 7-3, you're not going to say the coin is fixed, right? You'll understand that. But if you flip that coin 70 times and 300 times, you should get something closer to like 698 and 302, right? You should, or 402, no 302, right? But that's what you should get, because now you're approaching. There's the sort of large numbers. Is the more trials of a thing you have, the closer you get to the probability of said thing happening. With that said, now let's talk about drinking and driving. I have an article about this. I keep meaning to publish it because it was a newsletter I sent out. But the odds of you getting caught drinking and driving are so small. It's kind of terrifying. Like when you look at the numbers.
No, I learned that in high school.
Yeah,
everyone drank and drove because there were no taxis. Like everyone just did it, and no one ever really got caught.
It's actually kind of weird. Like, and the way I phrased it in the newsletter was like, if you get caught drinking and driving, you're actually unlucky.
Yeah.
And that's weird to think about, right? But in terms of how we define luck, which is like the favorable outcome in a series of trials,
it's improbable.
Improbable. But if you keep doing that shit, eventually it's going to happen.
Right.
You can only outrun the law of
because
large
the odd
numbers.
becomes more and more likely the more you drink and drive.
I got pulled over 4 times and I was drunk. One time I got pulled over because I ran the red light. It was my bad. I talked these motherfuckers. I mean, made them laugh, told some jokes. And it's funny in this story. They were like, "You ever been to Atlanta?" I was like, "Nah, man, I ain't never been to Atlanta. Why? Bought some warrants down in Atlanta for you. This is a mistake, right? Wasn't me. I'm not the dude that was still in the cars." What I learned later on is that they should have taken me into the station regardless. So I clear that up.
There was an Ed Latimore that had been stealing cars in Atlanta.
Man, it was crazy.
And they didn't take you in.
They didn't take me in.
Why not? You could just because you were so damn
knows? I'll tell you another story. They should have took me in. Got pulled over. They said, "You smell like you've been drinking." I said, "A little bit." Like, had me take the sobriety test. Took the field sobriety test. The whole walk on, with your arms out, touch your nose, all that shit. They said, "Go get in the car and wait." Guy comes back to the car. Word for word, here's what he says to me: "You're a little over the limit, but but you need to get home now." I'm like, "What the fuck do you mean? I'm over the limit? You gonna let me go?" "Oh, okay." Number 2. Number 3. Me and my buddy are coming back from it was like a charity event for the boxing community. We get pulled over. Been drinking at the event, whatever, right? And he runs my license, and turns out my license was suspended. I forgot to pay a ticket. Anybody who's ever been driving with a suspended license, that's go straight to jail. You're supposed to be picked up that night. He looks at me and he goes, "I don't know what I said. Apparently it was funny, but I'm gonna let you get home and you take care of this." And me, I'm such a degenerate at this point. I didn't know he took my license. I was just gonna drive and be like, I didn't know if I got pulled over again. Not knowing this was in the system or whatever. He took my license. I had to go deal with that. And the other time, I'm trying to remember. It's pretty vivid. I thought it was vivid. Maybe it was only 3 times. It'll come to me. Point is, to get pulled over and for them to acknowledge that I was drinking in each instance, that's luck, man.
Well, you have the opposite experience of me. So when I was 18, I'm at a party, local college. I wasn't supposed to be driving. It wasn't my car. My friend that was driving got shit-faced. I was the most sober one there. I had a couple drinks, but I have a high tolerance to alcohol, so I felt totally sober. And I had never driven a car that didn't have automatic lights. So when you turn it on, the lights go on. I get 50 yards and I get from the party and I get pulled over. And they're like, "Have you been drinking?" I'm like, "No, sir." They're like, "Well, I think you may be drunk." I'm like, because I kind of slur, even when I don't slur too much on this show, but I slur a lot, especially if it's just like later in the evening or I've had 1 or 2 drinks. Like I'm just a slur. And so maybe that's it, or maybe he's just suspecting I'm drunk. I don't know. Get out of the car. Gives me the sobriety test. I think I pass it, but I take the breathalyzer, and I don't know what the legal limit was for being 18, but I think it was lower. It was like 0.08 or 0.02. I blow a 0.079 or a 0.019, but so I'm 0.0005 away from getting a DUI. But I don't. They still arrest me.
Wow.
They still arrest me because there was some alcohol in the car. Like, it wasn't mine. I told them I was a designated driver. They still arrest me. It's a law in Massachusetts. If you're even if you're with someone that's 21, if they're not your parents and you're under 21, you get arrested for minor transport of alcohol. Get arrested twice for that summer. Never was always a designated driver. Never drunk, but got arrested twice. That's 2 of my 7 arrests. But crazy shit. Like, got arrested for being the designated driver, but that made me much more cautious about being drunk and driving because I saw they can be out to get you. I mean, you had the opposite experience.
And there was a period in an event, I guess. We drove to, first of all, I never recommend it. It's nice. It's a nice drive, actually. We drove to Quebec City, Quebec, from Pittsburgh, PA. It was about a 12-hour drive. And Canada is one of those countries you can't enter if you have a DUI. And I remember I passed through the customs guard, no problem. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, I'm in Canada. And I was just like, man, I'm so happy I stopped drinking because there's no way I would have been able to make it. And then a few days ago,
you had just driven 12 hours.
A few days ago, I made a post about, make sure, I said there's a thin but fine line between enjoying your youth and fucking up your future. And some guy, and then after that, I made a post about TSA pre-check. That's when I got on a plane to come out here. Some guy commented, it was like, yeah, man, just thinking about this and your last post about the future. I tried to get TSA pre-check and I got denied. And I was like, oh, what was it? Because you got family in questionable parts of the world or a record. It's either one of those two. Yeah. He's like, all right, man, DUIs and drug charges. And I'm like, and I copy and pasted that to my girl she's a travel agent. That's like what she does. It's like our thing. It's like we travel, like doing that. She goes, yeah, I think it would have been a deal breaker if you couldn't get pre-check.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I just got my global entry renewed, which also gets you pre-check. So I got it for the first time. It must have been 5 years ago. So I would have been 24. And, I've been arrested 7 times. Never been convicted of anything. I always kind of finessed my way out, used my privilege, charmed the judge. Never took a plea deal. And it's funny that charge I'm telling you about, that time I was arrested, that's the one thing that came up 5 years ago. And they put me on a probationary period, but they gave me the pre-check. I mean, I just been arrested, but it was in the Department of Homeland Security system. They asked me again 5 years later about that arrest. I'm like, look, we talked about this. I never got convicted. I'm like, why is this an issue? 11
charges, man.
It's like, this is 11 years ago. I was literally the designated driver in a car, but that can literally be a deal breaker for them. My buddy got arrested 25 years ago for bringing Cuban cigars into the United States. Still can't get pre-check.
Man. Yeah, dude. And you know what? That's like a thing as well. But in terms of enlisting, people think, oh, they take anybody in the Army.
No.
Nope. Any criminal record, you can't go in. So that would have disrupted my entire plan.
No, so the second time I got kicked out of college, or I kind of dropped out. But I actually had been studying at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. I was telling you, I was one of the first non-cadets to ever study military strategy there. It was near the college that I had spent the first 2 years of, had been kicked out of once before. I left. But when I left, I actually got recruited by West Point to join, to go there. I would have had to start my whole college education over again because you have to do 4 years at West Point. And I don't think I could have ever done West Point. But you know what? You're not actually allowed to go to West Point if you have ADHD. That's a disqualifier. I mean, now obviously West Point is the highest level of of military entrance. You have to have a letter of recommendation for the president or vice president or member of Congress.
Yeah, one of your senator or something like that.
It's a serious qualifier, but I probably could have gotten in just based off of the relations I had developed at West Point. But then I was looking, I was like, ADHD. That's me. Like I'm not getting.
And that's what a lot of the military. I thought it was just you could join whatever because who wants to go to the military, right?
Right.
But I guess in peacetime, because that's like when you join, because you get the same benefits. You just don't have to go shoot at stuff and get shot at. In peacetime, they become more strict.
Yeah.
Yep. But in wartime, man, look, they've letting the waivers. That's what they call them, waivers. You got a record. You kill somebody. What do you do?
No, I mean it's terrifying. I mean, there was a recent FBI report on how white nationalists, gang members, and like from Latin gangs, black gangs, motorcycle gangs, guys that have records that literally have like gang member tattoos have infiltrated the military, are getting military level training, learning how to deal with assault weapons, and then sneaking this shit out and bringing it back to the gangs. Gangs are literally sending their members that are like 18 years old to go join the military to get proper military training. It's terrifying.
There's a great movie, City of God.
That's my favorite movie of all time.
Right.
That and Taxi Driver.
So you know that the guy when everybody's beefing and the black guy, I can't remember what the deal is, but they were saying one of the bullets from him is worth 10 from the normal gang members because he had military training. No. Like that's a big deal.
And that's a big thing. So this takes place in Brazil in the favelas, and it's an extraordinary movie. Must watch. One best foreign picture. But yeah, I mean, what's happening in Brazil. I mean, my business partner's Brazilian. I've spent time in Rio, Sao Paulo. I mean, it's organized. It's crazy. I mean,
they were just saying the big news story, right? I guess there was a raid on a favela.
It was a genocide.
But they call it a raid, but it was really
just a slaughter by the Rio police.
On some St. Valentine's Day massacre.
I mean, they killed 30 people, and only 4 of them were identified gang members. I mean, horrible, horrific. I mean, but it's gotten that bad there. I mean, it's going back to what happens when you don't have those social security systems in place and the support systems.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah, perfect example is just the gang. Whoever can bring in money in that society or a subsector of society takes control because there's nothing else for the people there, and it's
not only takes control, but sets up. I think the best way to describe it is not necessarily a government, but a totalitarianship.
Yeah,
very almost like a monarchy, kind of in the way that the what is that word?
Well, it's an oligarchy.
Oligarchy.
It's where the few people that have money take full control of society.
Yes,
and that's exactly what happens in any narco state or gang state. It's scary, and who has the weapons? It really is something that people in America can't even fathom. But
no, because America is a very interesting experiment relative to the rest of the world.
But we have a different type of oligarchy. But yes.
Well, you know what we did? We made it legal. So Coke and Pepsi aren't doing drive-bys on one another.
Yeah.
Right? Instead, they're going to war with dollars. And so what they did, I always say capitalism is like salt. And salt.
But they go to war on health.
Yeah.
They make sure sugar drinks don't get banned. They spend their money on the politicians to keep everything they're doing legal, even though they're probably the #1 killers in America.
Absolutely.
Them and Big Pharma.
Yeah. The cool thing about salt, right, is that it's made from 2 things that by itself are poisonous, chlorine and sodium. But put together, it becomes vital source, right? So like capitalism, greed and self-interest by themselves are remarkably destructive. But if you combine those 2 things, you get capitalism, and like salt and dashes, that shit is great. In fact, it's vital. The problem is when you put it on everything to excess, then you get an American health system and an American education system. Health and education, two places where I think capitalism was not meant to ever be applied, at least not to the degree in which it is now.
No.
Now, motherfuckers, paying $48,000 learn how to weave baskets or something stupid. I have a friend. He does construction, and he was telling me this story about how he's doing some construction at the college, and he's building what are they working on? A new auditorium for a play, right? And, and he goes, imagine Sunday paying $40,000 a year so your kid could put on a play.
Yeah, I mean the incentives in the education system are totally broken.
And
the
then,
more money you pay, the more freedom kids are given to do things that are not going to provide, sustainable long-term value for their life.
Not even close. I have a big problem with the education system, and I think one of the best things I did was I dropped out when I was 19. And I went back when I was 28 when I had real life experience.
And you became an adult. You were ready to value your education.
I was in there like, okay, I'm not here to chase broads. I'm not here to get drunk. I'm here to like study, go home.
No, getting kicked out of college right at the beginning of my freshman year, being homeless, having to work for myself, seeing that I never wanted that life again, knowing that I was going to go to college, I was going to create my own major and study something that I could apply for the rest of my life. I would end up dropping out two times after that and never finishing. But I apply what I studied in school every single day. I use that framework for thinking.
You went to the school of hard knocks, the school of real life. The biggest issue, we'll say second biggest. I think the cost is the bigger issue. But the second biggest issue with school is that it's an artificial system that does not mimic whatsoever.
No, it's called an ivory tower. It
does not mimic the conditions that it's purported to prepare you for. It would be like me sparring, but we never punch each other. We just move around. I'm like,
you think you know how to fight,
right? No, and then so the kids come out, and not only is the method of earning a living and the rules for that completely different than it is for getting these good grades and being pleasing the professor so they can give you the mark of approval to pass on, but also the social environment as well. And this is why I find related to the drinking, a lot of kids come out of college with a drinking problem because they don't know it. They literally don't know any other way to socialize. Because what does college do? It goes, all right, we're all here. Let's get together in someone's basement and drink shitty beer. Well, and call that a social life.
And college doesn't necessarily set you up to be around people that you would normally want to be with, or that at least later in life you would want in your immediate circle, because you're the product of the people that are around you. In college you end up being around the people that you can have fun when you're escaping from your academic work with, but those aren't necessarily the people that you want to like push you up and make you the best person you can be.
It's a society in general, and the societal institutions involved are that we erect kind of to keep things in order, college being one of them. They are designed largely to keep people from falling through. They aren't meant to elevate you. They're just made so you don't.
No, they're there to give you that baseline
or fall through the cracks.
Give you that piece of paper that gets you a job and gives you
so everyone feels really good, and it really kind of makes you conform. It also ties you to the system real hard to take risks when
exactly
when they're coming for that.
You look at people that get a college degree, and they're so disinclined to take risks, especially if they do it right after high school, because all you've ever been taught is you follow the rules, you work hard in school, and you'll be fine. And that's just not life.
And maybe it was at one point, but I think one of the things that we as because you're definitely a millennial. I don't know if you fall into
I'm a
older millennial.
I'm a later end millennial, but I remember a world without mobile phones or without the internet.
Awesome. So your parents would have given you the piece of advice, go to college and just
Oh
study
yeah,
whatever.
middle-class Jewish parents. That's the only thing that was expected of me.
Right.
I am still a failure in my parents' eyes
Which
because
is insane.
I never graduated from high school. I never graduated from college. My parents went to Ivy League schools. My dad went to Harvard and Princeton, got his PhD. You know, to them that is the bare metric for success that one needs. And I never met that.
Yeah, and it's crazy because, you know, that is in our world, that outcome is closer to failure than actual failure in my like I remember
Well,
my idea.
it shows a lack of independence needed to really thrive in today's world.
Right. And so it's weird because there's like a class. Let's talk about it in classes, right? And there's really like there's kind of three classes, maybe four if you want to look at it. And there's like the worker bee class, right? And these are the people we need. Now it has nothing to do with income. Because you can be a high income worker bee class, low income worker bee class, but either way, you support.
You
the
work for the
hive.
man.
Yeah, and more importantly, this is one of the things I say. You support the hive directly. You know, like and I put everything from pilots to doctors in this category because we
Yes.
need them, and thank God that they're not like, you know what, fuck medical school. I need to go start my own online hustle. Like, nah, man, because I kind of need a heart transplant in a few years. So
Yeah.
thank you for not doing that.
You need the pilots, you need the
You're right.
drivers, you need the people that make the economy work.
And then on the other two ends of that, there's this servant type class. These people who are now the delivery drivers and the Uber Eats and the DoorDash cats and the shop people. The ones who are like, I didn't even know this. It blows my mind. It used to be like a rich person thing where you get your groceries delivered. Now that's like an app, man. You just you pay and you pay a little extra and your groceries show up. And then there are like the legal lawmakers and enforcers of society, and I put those in a different category than serving the hive because they have actual power to enforce and direct people in the hive. You realize we don't fall into those categories. I mean, maybe we supplement different aspects of it, but we don't, like, no one tells me what to do. No one can cancel me. No one can take anything away from me. And that is unbelievable. It's impressive. People like people, if you got a bunch of friends who are not in the same space exactly, like people you grow up with, they give you a look of awe, but with kind of fear, like,
yeah, no,
this is cool, but what the fuck?
Yeah,
like,
that's exactly. I mean, look, I go from a small town. I never met a millionaire until I was probably, late teens, early 20s. Like, it was firmly middle class. You know, we had a housing projects, but everyone was pretty much the same. Because my dad was a college professor and I went to private schools, which my dad's college paid for, I was a rich kid. Like, that was it. Like, my parents combined, if they made over $100,000, it was just over that. Like, it was like we were firmly middle class by any standard metric in America, but in my town, that made me like rich. That I was so different. But then people then go, and everyone thought like no one thought I was going to do much with my life. They were like, if he somehow turns his life around, maybe he'll turn out like his dad. He'll be a college professor or something, or I'll like work in politics, but never really accomplish much. And then they see what I do when I kept on doing exactly what I was doing throughout high school. Right. I was always an outlier. I was always messing up, but I learned to take that outline and apply it to something where I could thrive. But nobody saw that because there was no conception of entrepreneurship or working in tech. It just wasn't a life course that someone took where I'm from.
And like it's like the stuff I do on social media. I remember for a long time, it was kind of this joke, like, oh, he's all this time on social media and tweeting. Oh, my buddy was like, oh, we read your tweets every day to our kid or something like that, and it's interesting.
But they didn't take it seriously,
right? To them, it wasn't the serious thing. And then all of a sudden, because you can only hide things for so long, right? And I am by like no means a flashy person. Not even really a rich person. Oh, God has like more than I think a bit more than the average person, and certainly the way I get it makes it look like a lot. But you can only hide so long. Like, he's not working. He's on a plane again somewhere else.
Well,
he's traveling somewhere else.
So what I want to talk about is what happens when you are that outlier, when you end up taking an unconventional approach, because this is something you write about, this is something you talk about. You know, you've you know you've gone and finished and gotten your college education.
The,
You've
the
served,
conventional thing.
yeah, you've served in the military, but then you don't go and do something conventional. You go and do something unconventional. You become a writer online. You build an online brand. You build a social media presence. Sell these courses. You inspire a lot of people. I mean, I've followed you for 7 years, probably more religiously than anyone else on the internet, because I really take a lot from what you do. But I even in my world, it's unconventional, and you talk about how your friends kind of look at what you're doing and they kind of
They were
look
kind of like,
and,
well, now it's a
uh,
very different
y-
look because it's
because they
very
know you're doing
obvious.
well. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But it's still interesting because you get flattened. This is what happened to me. They're like, "Oh, we were talking about this. Oh, he just got rich off of Bitcoin." I'm like, that's not what happened. But it's a neater narrative. It's like, oh, he just tweets.
Yeah.
Like he became an influencer. But we
Right.
work. We
People actually
hustle.
call me an influencer. And I used to take offense to that, but now I understand
You're
that it's the best
influential
word that they have.
for what you do.
Yeah, I can deal with a loss of precision if we can increase effectiveness of communication.
But it does flatten who you are. And I guess I'm asking this more for myself than for the audience is, you know, how do you deal with that? Because you talk about, not giving a shit about what other people think. But when it's your friends, so it's people you came up with, you grew up with, the people whose opinions to some extent or another you have to respect, when they kind of flatten who you are, how do you address that?
Well, fortunately for me, the flattening didn't occur until I had a little bit more emotional growth and maturity, and this is important because you can look at the same you can look at what happened, you can see it one way, or as you grow, mature, you see it for what it really is, or at least closer to what it really is. And even if you don't get it exact, what is important is you don't see it for what you thought it was when you were seeing it through a lens of perhaps insecurity or negativity or approval seeking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So the way I've learned to deal with that is I don't. I know that first of all, I know I'm doing great. So I don't no, that in and of itself. Now, if I was like, squeaking by, like doing like 50,000 a year or something like that,
Yeah.
I'd be like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
But I know things are going great. So there's that inner confidence that I don't have to prove anything. But I also know that like I appreciate so much now more than I ever did my upbringing. Because one of the things that happens when you come up in an unconventional kind of broken environment is you never really have anything to latch on to. There aren't any role models, for better or worse. So there was nothing that made me think that one path was going to be better than the other than perhaps the need for approval.
Well, that was the thing for me was I had no fear of failure because I had never really succeeded before. No, no, no.
That's one way to put it. Yep.
Truly, I don't think I could have become the entrepreneur that I did if the bar wasn't set so damn low for me. I had,
and it's so, you know what it is? It's set so low that it's effectively non-existent.
right. No, I like literally people, when I was 16, I was told I was going to be in jail, dead, or addicted to drugs by the time I was 25, and that was the bar that was set. And so I knew if I could just not be that at 25, I was doing great. But it made me have no fear of failure, and I was willing to just do things that people thought were outlandish. Just getting into Bitcoin, starting a company is like, what are you doing? Starting a
Right.
company? Well, like, what are you doing? Investing every penny that you have into crypto, like that? They like what?
Because the thing is this: when your vision gets shaped by its function, and when your function is just to look at and follow the thing in front of you, that's what you quite literally become blind to other opportunities. It's
And
like
that's the risk of college.
you ever talk to somebody who wants to start a business, but their entire life they have been on the non-business path, because there's a definite personality that goes into the kind of eat what you kill lifestyle mentality. If you haven't been brought up with that, or at least have some type of inclination towards it, it ain't for you. It doesn't matter how smart you are. You don't have the temperament
Yeah,
to
it
do
doesn't
it.
matter how good your idea is, your ability to execute it is not
Yeah,
that there because
it
there's
just
so much risk, there's so much failure involved.
and it goes against everything that you know and how
Yeah.
you can behave.
And it goes against what's worked for you in the past.
But people like us, there have been there are no molds, there's no preconceptions. So we can look at a thing and we can put our own ideas and our own ambitions and our own temperaments over it, and then we can decide, okay, is this a better way? Is this good for me? Like 100%. I know now at this point with my following and reach, that the sky is more or less the limit, right? But I'd like to get up there the way I want to get up there. I don't want to, just fucking take a jet because I don't want to fly jets. I want to take maybe a hot air balloon and enjoy the scenery. And that means maybe not going as high or as fast, but that's still better than being forced to walk on the ground, you know? So I think we all have to have, or what we have is people not following the traditional path. We have non-traditional eyes. We see opportunities differently. It's like, how do the rich get richer, right? If you want to like use that cliche. Well, part of it is they have the resources they've accumulated, but they also just see an opportunity. They see opportunities that people don't
And
see.
that's what luck is, which
Yeah.
and having the willingness to take risk on those
Yeah, or the
opportunities.
risk, ability, and the willingness to go, okay, that is an idea. Like I remember talking to somebody and they're like, I want to write a book. I'm just not sure if it'll sell. And I'm like, well, you don't want to write a book then. Go get a job, motherfucker. There's other things. Like if
Yeah.
you want to guarantee this is not
Yeah, writing a book is
and
not the way to
realistically, if you want some money, this ain't really the
and that's why I tell people that want to build a startup. I'm like, look, if you have a great idea and you're trying to solve a real problem in your life or for the community that you're from, don't worry about the money. If you're solving a real problem, the money will come. But don't start a startup to make money because
Yeah.
because then the incentives are all aligned for doing what you're doing and you're not going to make it.
And yeah, like I wrote when I wrote the first book of mine, the first self-published book, and really the second one too, and probably this one as well that I'm working on. Making money from the book never entered my mind. Not because I didn't want to make money. Certainly for the first one, it would have been great to make some money, but because I understood, or rather, I understand now too, that that's not going to help me create a lasting piece of thing like something powerful and that's going to contribute, make a difference, whatever, have a real effect. Now what I will try to do is write a thing that's going to make some money, and maybe it'll succeed at that, but I know what it won't do. It won't be something I enjoy writing, which means it won't be something people enjoy reading at least as much as they could. And even if they do enjoy reading it, I won't be sitting there talking about it and I go, oh, I ain't really want to write this shit. I mean, but I had to get paid.
But I knew you might buy it.
But I knew you'd buy it. Gotcha.
Yeah.
But who'd you get? You got me? Nah, so nah, man, that's how that goes.
And I want to go a bit back to emotional maturity because to get where you were, it took a lot of growth. Or to where you are, it took a lot of growth and it took a lot of stages. Like you look at my life and going back to the flattening, uh, at 22 or 23, all of a sudden I was having articles written about me in like Entrepreneur magazine. I was getting press and it's all positive
I
at first.
couldn't deal with it.
And going back to the flattening, it was, at 26, all of a sudden crypto goes up in late 2017, 2018. All of a sudden, in like a period of a month, 3 articles I just hate are written about me. One cover story in the New York Times. And I felt flattened. And I was not emotionally mature enough to deal with this, depiction of who I was that I didn't feel was actually me. And that it really got to my core. And that's when I actually ended up leaving Silicon Valley, moving to Miami, and really focusing on myself because, you know, I don't think I could have ever done press again, until I emotionally matured. And my emotional maturation was really something that I kind of forced upon myself because I realized that despite all the attention and money I had been making, I wasn't actually been growing as an individual. I was growing intellectually, I was growing professionally, but not, emotionally, spiritually, in the way that I wanted to. And so it was forced upon me. But I know that based off of what you were saying earlier, you started tweeting. I started following you in 2014. You were still in the military. You were still in school. It was a big period of growth for you. And yet, and maybe this is because you were a bit older, the wisdom that you had, back 7 years ago when I first started following you was incredibly unique. And so I want to understand how you've evolved emotionally, given everything that we know about you. From what your childhood to boxing, to dropping out of school, to going into school. That emotional growth. How do you quantify it? Has it happened in stages, or has it just been this gradual precipitation of lessons that you've learned that is now a career for you? Like, inspiring people, motivating people, giving people wisdom that, they're seeking in their lives. It's something that you've done over, almost for the better part of the decade now. It's not something that, even for me, I couldn't do what you do. Where does it come from?
Um, well, okay, so they're like mature, right? I think I say four things. I know three, maybe the fourth one will come to me as I'm talking about it. One, you need experiences. You need things to like happen to you. Two, then you need some time since those things happen for you to process, reflect, whatever you're gonna do with those, and then and learn from them. Right now, dude, there are four things. So you need you need the experiences. You need the time to kind of step back and reflect from them and all that. Right, you need to be able to integrate them. That takes even more time. You learn, the stove is hot. It's not just enough not to touch the stove, but also you got to learn where shit is that you can put on your hand to make sure you can touch the stove when you need to, right? That kind of deal. So it's implementing the lessons. And then here's the final part, right? And it's the part you can't control. It's the part you can't do nothing about. But wait, you need a fully developed brain where your prefrontal cortex is just kind of finished, done, and your brain is not really going to grow and do anything else. And that happens between the ages of, say, 25 and 28. By the time you get to 29, your brain is more or less done doing what it's going to do in terms of what we'll call it vertical improvement. Everything else after that is horizontal, where you shift from one thing to another, or kind of take stuff from one area and pull it over here. Okay. So when all that comes together, then you can actually like mature. You can like reflect. I practice forgiveness as an art, right? I think it's very important. It's the next book is about. But I am under no delusions that part of what helped me forgive my mother is that I just got older. I was just able to look at what would happen. I was able to integrate. I had more experiences now as a 26, 27-year-old versus an 18 or 19-year-old. I learned things from them. I could integrate them. I had things, and then my brain was just maturing, right? So I can look at these things and go, oh wow, okay, well, you weren't an asshole. You were just doing the best you could do. You didn't know any better. That's what you came up with. So now that's what you tried to give us, and it's kind of my job now is to not take that to the next generation. When you do when those four things occur, then all of a sudden you'll be mature, right? And you can't control that last one. The other three you can control. The things you experience, the amount of time you take to reflect.
But I do have to say though,
Yeah.
so when I moved to Miami, I knew that. I only had a window of 2 to 4 years before my brain fully developed. And the most critical period of my life, if I wanted to like start being the person I wanted to be in the future, was to focus on that version of myself. A lot of people spend their mid to late 20s just focus on their career. Worst mistake you can make. If
Yeah,
you
you're gonna live for a while. I mean,
like
you guys, you got some time. Yeah.
really investing in that emotional, spiritual, intellectual development outside of your work, outside of your social life during that period of your life is so critical. And that's the only reason why we're having this conversation today. That's the only reason why we're in this room. It's because I feel like so many young people, especially those that take that conventional path, never give regard to that final stage of emotional growth. And they say, most men don't achieve emotional maturity until they're like 35 or 40. And there's a reason for that. It's like men aren't taught to. Like men are not taught
Well,
to.
not only are they not taught to, but yeah, I think that time gap is getting greater because that initial component, that initial piece, the experiences. We're just having less experiences, man. You know what? Fucking video games, it's just they're great.
Yeah.
When I was in the army, we had to watch this slideshow about injuries and the basic training. And since 1985, they've gone up linearly and consistently because kids are coming in less shape. And these are the ones that self-select themselves out to join the military. We know the obesity rate's rising and rising pretty rapidly. We're on pace by
it's
2025 to
yeah.
be 80% of the country
overweight.
is overweight.
Yeah.
So we're not getting experience in the purest sense of the word, because when you're a fat fuck, you're probably not dating, you're probably not getting a lot of social activities, but you are getting a lot of video games.
Yeah.
When you're not really challenging yourself either, because well, you're already averse to difficulty in the way you live. So
you haven't talked about porn, but I know you talk about porn too.
yeah, man. That's a
porn
whole
and
different
video
animal.
games
We don't want to crack that one open, because then it will turn into a long event. But the TLDR is that the experience portion is being removed, and because they get experience. What's the old saying, right? Good judgment comes from experience. To get a lot of experience, you got to have bad judgment. So getting experience is hard. It's painful. It's not pleasant usually. No one comes. Very few experiences, especially ones that grow you. You don't come out going, man, I would love to do that again. It's like, holy shit, man, I survived that. Let's slow down for a minute. And now we have the option to avoid that entirely.
Well, and you talk about millennials. Like my generation was the last generation when parents would say, when you were messing around, oh, go outside, just go play outside. Like that doesn't happen anymore. Kids, they're like, oh, go on your iPad.
Shit, you know, we used to get, my mom would like lock the door and be like, don't fucking come out. I don't care where you go, but you can't come here until the sun come down. I'm like,
yeah, that led to some misbehavior on my part, but it was good because we went out hiking, we went out into nature, we played sports, we were together, we socialized. And I think there's the socialization that occurs online, which while it can be amazing, be really incredible for a lot of kids, it's not the same.
I met my two best friends because in the 9th grade we were talking shit about who was better at Marvel versus Capcom. Not Marvel versus Capcom 2, but the original MVC. That's how long ago this was. And so we settled it. We went to the arcade at the mall back when that was a thing, and everybody was there playing the fighting games. And you put your quarter up on the dash, let you know who's next. I don't know how we kept track of them because all the quarters looked the same, but we did, and no fights broke out because it was a civil environment. And we settled it, and after that, we went back to his house for food. This is where I saw a 2-parent household. The first time operating together, I was like, wow, this is great. But that's how my friends, man, that's what we used to do. We used to get together, and playing video games was a real social thing. And now, log in Xbox Live and everybody's a nigger or something. Which is crazy to me, but like how that shit goes on. But hey, man, here we are.
Without even for us, like even screen time, we would go and we would take the bus to the local mall, 15 minutes outside of town, and we would go to the movie theater, or we'd meet up with friends. But even like going to the movies or playing video games at the arcade was a social activity. It wasn't something that happened
what blows
online.
my mind, yo? I didn't even think about the implication of this. So during the whole quarantine, and this is the genie that's not going back in the bottle, the fact that they were like releasing movies on the home streaming services as well as in the theater. And now that you mention that, yeah, man, that was like a rite of passage. You and your friends went to the fucking movies together, man.
And that was what we looked forward to. We'd go and get high in the woods near the movie theater, and like we would look forward to that more than anything.
If you was a real degenerate, y'all would come up with a scheme to sneak half y'all in by
oh yeah, we'd go to the R-rated movie.
It was fun, but those things are gone now because you just sit at home and you watch it on your streaming service. So this is the blessing and the curse of technology. It is so great and so debilitating.
Well, and I think that I think the consequence. This is we're going to what makes a man, because one of my conclusions coming to this show is that what makes a great man or makes a great woman is pretty much the same, but what allows you to get there is almost different. Like going through adolescence as a young man. There are these formative experiences, where, you learn to bond, you learn to lift each other up. And I think what a lot of men and a lot of young women, but it's a somewhat different problem. But, the support groups aren't there. I mean, talk about the mental health crisis is when you don't have those bonding experiences, going out, causing mischief, adventuring, something is lost, and that emotional maturity is stunted.
I
Those.
would, yeah, I mean, like, I would never. I know we have like some people in the room who are like in their early 20s. I would never want to be like that. Not today, man, because it's a different. Well, not only that, but now like everything you do, these guys do. It's film, man. If that shit happened, I would definitely be in jail at the very
Well,
least.
yeah, I mean,
There's just no
if
way,
we had
man.
social media, smartphones, even camera phones back when I was causing mischief, oh my god, I
You
don't
just
know.
pull out a phone,
Yeah,
or my for
that's terrifying.
one of
Like,
the things you learn how to do because with G's from the old days, you send a message, you just assume that that's going to be screenshot, and so you send your messages that way. I mean, but then guys are still out there sending dick pics and
I
stupid
can't
pictures.
imagine how
So
many like young teenagers' lives are just on a daily basis just getting ruined because they did
just
some
finish,
stupid shit.
man, because they're not there yet. You
Yeah,
get all this power, all
all
this
that room to make
magic.
mistakes evaporates when you record it, and
Yeah,
you.
and we can't forget. There's no statue of. I mean, there is, but like it's way too long. And on top of that, uh, people, there's a stigma when you mess up and you make a mistake, even as a youngster, man. And people like to use it and weaponize your past, and instead of going, "Hey, you were 19." Like now I hear that when I'm 19 years somebody I go, "Man, you're 19, man. Shut the fuck like that." And I'm like, I don't say it like that, but my brain kind of tucks it in this place. Yeah. You ever you ever listen to a kid like you know what it's like? You ever give a kid like a phone and the kid thinks somebody's on the phone and so it talks and you play along because it's fun and the kid doesn't know better and everybody goes, I'm happy. And that's kind of the way you gotta like you deal with someone in that age range. And that is not to demean them, but that is to say when you if that is kind of where we're gonna look at people and then go, okay, well, you're a certain age, whatever, you have to recognize, well, part of the reason why you do that is the emotional maturity is not there, and that's gonna lead to certain mistakes. And you go, okay, those things happen. That's cool. We're just gonna wipe this one clean and kind of forget you didn't kill anybody, you didn't rape anybody. All right, we're gonna wipe this one clean and let it go. The issue is when they, we dig it up. I like, look, man, I'm black, man. Look, if you was stupid and 19-year-old wigger and you was dropping that bomb, look, I'm not gonna be like, all right, it's okay. I'm gonna be like, look, man, now you know better. Let's go get some chicken. You feel better? Like, no, but that's the kind of humor you gotta have with your life, and you have a
But yeah, I mean, there has to be room to make mistakes, but there also needs to be a willingness to make those
yeah,
mistakes.
because when you remove the willingness to make mistakes, then you end up with a different problem. And that problem is just as bad because you go make the mistakes and you try and get the experience, but you're vilified for when things go wrong, so you don't try. And when you don't try, then you don't grow. And then you're a fucking 30-year-old that ain't never even tried to kiss a girl, and now you're socially awkward every you're around women, and you get a nosebleed or something every time someone smiles at you. Like it's weird. Like there is no growth without pain, and we keep trying to.
They call it growing pains for a reason.
Yeah, we keep trying to eliminate that. There's no way.
No, I think, it's so important that, I think so many like perspectives on what it means to be a man are toxic. And I think that society is better off where some of those kind of, mid 20th century stigmas around masculinity are eliminated, but still giving men the motivation to grow into men. It's not, or just grow into adulthood, but into maturity. You can't shelter people forever, and there is something that comes with being tougher. And I think this is something you write about a lot. And look, we're not really talking about a lot of your writing, because I think people should just go read your writing. But I think, whether it's someone like you writing what you do, there needs to be the more positive role models about, growing up and being emotionally mature. Because I think if there isn't anyone or anything for, young men, young women to look up to, you know, there's this void. And I think, society becomes something that's very weak and fragile, and I think more toxic, because then people cling on to ideas. I think if you look at the polarization that exists in our society today, so much of it comes from people just are don't care about anything else in their life. So they just attach to issues on the internet and they become these trolls and because they're not taking any risk anywhere. So they take their risks, behind an anonymous avatar on the internet.
Yep. That's a great point. The avatar becomes the representation of their representation, and no one wants to. It's fear, so much fear. No one wants to take the arrows because they're not used to taking any arrows. So if you can't deal with the digital criticism, you'll never be able to take the physical criticism. You ever see Glenn Ross and there's that scene where Alec Baldwin comes in and he's trying to rev everybody up. It's a great scene. Alec Baldwin's the only scene in the movie he gets nominated for best supporting actor from like a 5-minute scene. And one of the things he's saying, he's trying to get these salesmen revved up because the numbers suck. And they're like, dude, you got to be so harsh or something. Like, he was like, you can't take this. You can't take this. If you can't take this abuse here, what are you going to do when the abuse comes on a set? Like, what isn't you sitting in the cell? Like, you're not trying to sell me anything. You can't even deal with this here. It's a great movie.
I need to watch that, but I really just want to say thank you because I think you have so many valuable lessons. I mean, literally, I've been eating up what you've had to say for years now. And I think, when I talk about what makes a man, it's less about being man, although you're pretty beefy, but it is about that emotional maturity. And I think there needs to be more conversations about, what it means to kind of break out of what is comfortable. I think we're too comfortable often as a society, and that unless we have conversations like the ones that we're having, I think people are going to live less happy lives. And I think what you provide in your books and in your tweets, you can follow him, Ed Latimore. So if you're at Twitter, please get this man verified. It's just crazy that he's not verified yet on the Twitter. But, go read what Ed has to say, because I think, I'm going to try to have these sorts of conversations as much as possible on this show. But there are not enough people talking about this and talking about it without being worried about ruffling a few feathers.
Right.
You are...
You can't cancel me.
Yeah.
You can try anyhow.
You are uncancelable, and I love that.
That's the best way.
But you also are so thoughtful. And, given how long we've been running, and I don't know how long people are going to pay attention to this show, I'm going to say we have to have another conversation because I know we can keep on talking for a long time. But thank you so much for being on the show. Like I said, I was so thrilled when you said you'd come on. I've been wanting to meet you for years now. And I think this was a thought-provoking, wide-ranging conversation, and this sort that I hope to have with every guest. So thanks so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it.
Man. Thank you.
We're going to have to play one more chess match before you leave. All right. Thank you so much for watching, for listening. This is What Makes a Man.